Okay, I think the recording has now started. So welcome everyone to the Easter Ross Area Committee. The meeting will be recorded for archiving for public access via the Council's internet site. Now, I think I won't read through the whole protocol because I think we're quite familiar with it now, having done many of these. But just to remind everyone, if you can activate your camera, particularly when you're speaking, but keep your mic muted when you're not speaking, please. If you've got any questions, just remember to put an indication in the hands up, and you will be come to in the order that you put your hands up. Okay, we're shortly to come to any declarations of interest, so if members have any, if they could put their hands up then. Okay, I don't think there's anything else that members are not aware of. If you have any technical issues, then if you let us know in the chat, and we can arrange, Helen can arrange for IT support to be sent to you. Okay, everyone, thank you. First of all, I'll move to Fiona, who will take the roll call and tell us of any apologies.
Morning, members. I have no apologies, but I'll just do a quick roll call. Councillor Finlayson.
Here.
Councillor Loudon.
So Derek was here, but he seems to have dipped off. I'm not sure if there's a
yes, he's not showing,
problem.
but hopefully he'll reappear.
Definitely was here, yeah.
Councillor Monroe.
Here, sorry.
Councillor Rind.
Here.
Councillor Robertson, you're here. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, here.
And Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, here.
Is Councillor Loudon back yet?
I'm just giving him a quick ring to see what the problem is.
Okay, thanks, Helen.
Right, thank you. Bye.
Okay, that's great, and there's no apologies. Okay, item number 2, declarations of interest. Does any member have any? No. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 3 on the agenda, which is the Police Area Performance Summary Report, which is on pages 1 to 9 of your papers. And we've got Chief Inspector Jamie Wilson here to talk to the report and answer any questions that you have. There we are. Hi, Jamie.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming along today. If I just hand over to you.
Okay, I'll summarise the key points that I've picked out for the report, and then, yeah, eager to answer any questions you've got. So the first page, the number of people detected for drink and driving offences, it's sitting at 90. Now, I realise that this report covers the period from the 1st of April to the 30th of November, but there has been an increase in the number of drink drive detections. Like, our stats extract alcohol and drug detections under the same banner, but there's been an increase in the number of drug detections because we've increased the number of officers who are trained to complete the drug wipe procedure. So expect in the next performance report, you will see an increase from the previous year on that. Speeding remains relatively static, an increase of 23. Seatbelt offences is down 13, and like you could see in the final column there, they're attributing that to the reduction of traffic on our roads. I would agree with that. In terms of serious and organised crime, the points that I would highlight are in relation to the drug search warrants, eight search warrants executed, all a positive result, which is always good, which shows that our assessment of the crime is accurate. In addition to that, there's 36 incidents where suspect packages have been intercepted prior to delivery, which is again a good result. And we see our statistics are very impressive across the whole of North Highland for that. Theft by housebreaking is up from 9 to 14. I've looked at those stats in a bit more detail, and I could break them down because the housebreaking banner, that includes your conventional break into a house, if you like, but also a break into a shed. It could be a break into a lockfast place, so it could be a break into a till, a break into a cabinet of some kind. So it could be a bit misleading, but what I would focus on is the number of actual break-ins to houses, and that amounts to 5. So that amounts to 8. We've got 2 in Tain, 1 in Invergordon, 3 in Alness, and 2 in Eventon. And I've looked through all of those for any commonality. There isn't any. And if there was commonality, then I would say that we've got a problem. These appear to be fairly random, but involve people that are known to the police. So it's offenders that are committing offences against other offenders in the main. We've also had 3 attempted house break-ins, and that's in Invergordon. The number of theft by shoplifting is down to 27 from 50 from the last reporting period. Again, I think that's probably attributable to a lockdown. And there was nothing of major significance in the remaining stats on that page. The number of offences reported, the number of people reported for the supply of drugs is up to 11 from 8. The occurrences of common assault is up from 120 to 149. But those common assaults also include assaults on emergency workers. So in the main, that's police officers. There's been an increase in the number, and that continues across into the next reporting period. So you could expect that in the next one. It's a high detection rate of 77%, but 24 incidents of assault on emergency workers. I see that every day for the whole of North Highland. Like, I'm not sure if it's been shared with you, but our Chief Constable, Ian Livingston, has declared a pledge against assaults on emergency workers. So it involves greater scrutiny of assaults, looking for commonality, looking for intervention, and looking for support from the courts when our officers are assaulted. My personal opinion is that the courts don't come down hard enough on offenders that commit those offences, but we're hoping that will change. Incidents of vandalism is up from 93 to 143, and you'll see in the final column there that are attributing that to youth offending. I would agree with that. Probably linked to boredom as a result of lockdown. And yes, the number of stop searches conducted, 143 down to 53, again as a result of lockdown, but the detection rate on those searches is very high. So I wouldn't like to see us searching people and not achieving a high detection rate, which would then infer that our means, our justification for carrying out those searches is not meeting the threshold. We are. Sexual crimes, you'll see sitting at 70 last year and 18 this year. I believe that relates to, the reason for the high reduction could be COVID related as well, because people are not getting the opportunity to report. I don't think that's the cause. I think it probably relates to, we had a significant incident in another area of North Highland where a particular victim reported a high number of crimes over a number of years, historical offences. But when those are reported, they're counted for that particular year. So if they happened in 1975, but they're reported today, they count as a start for today, which isn't ideal, but that's the way it has to be done. So 70 to 18 is, I can't say pleasing because I don't want any, but it's good to see that we're not sitting up at that high level again. Moving on to missing people on the preventions and intervention section, 80 missing people in North Highland. Where we are sitting just now, I personally feel, and I know it's accurate, the number of missing people has reduced drastically. Not quite sure why that is, whether our care homes are doing a better job of looked after children and keeping them indoors, or people are in fear of being issued tickets when they shouldn't be out and about. I don't quite know what the reason for that or the causation is for that, but there has certainly been a reduction, and I would expect in the next report you'll see that in your stats. The next section is pretty standard in terms of counter-terrorism, and then there's a brief summary of the fatals that you've had in your area during the reporting period. And that's the main section of the report. I've got a couple of other wee things to speak about, but I prefer to give you an opportunity to ask me questions, if that's okay.
Hi Jamie, there's no hands up at the moment, so I'll just comment on a few things that I have. First of all, just to express the shock at the assaults that you have on your officers, particularly during this time, when it's really a major concern that this is going on, and it's good that you're really coming down hard on that. And we would fully support you doing that. Comment on the vandalism, which we've been experiencing very high levels of vandalism in Tain, particularly our public toilets and the Rose Garden. We're continually highlighting this. We're having to spend money in order to try and make the toilets more vandal proof, in order to do repairs in the Rose Garden. Neighbours are being well, really constantly terrified, I think, by the stuff that's going on in the Rose Garden. It's really unpleasant, and we have to try and do something. I don't know what the answer is, but we really can't let it go on the way it has been going on in Tain. We have to take a tougher action.
I'm aware of the issue, and I spoke to James Rice, Inspector, yesterday, just to get an update on where things are with the Rose Garden toilets. Like personally, I still drive through Tain every day on the way home because I've still got a bit of passion for Easter Ross as Inspector there for 3 years, and occasionally see the youths hanging about, and well, they would be chased off if I did see any criminality personally by me. But anyway, the Rose Garden situation. So I know that a security survey was carried out by Kevin Taylor, and please excuse me if I'm telling you things you already know, because I realise you will know a lot of this already. But Kevin Taylor, our preventions and interventions, so he's specifically trained to try and improve the security of premises. So I know he's looked at lighting, and James Rice yesterday explained to me that I think you have funding for that. I asked for a time scale around it because I know that the Rose Garden the Rose Garden problem's been going on for years, and you know, we see lulls and then it spikes again, and probably attributable to a hardcore group of offenders, and when they disappear we get a lull, and then there's other people that decide to give it negative attention, which we then have to deal with. So the lighting issue, I understand, is being covered. There is a camera which could be trained on the Rose Gardens. I understand there's a bit of an obstacle at this moment in time with that, but James is looking at that. You might know more than me. James does have a patrol plan in place for the toilets. I appreciate that you're not going to have police officers there all the time, but that is what we are doing in visiting the toilets to make sure that there are no children there or anybody else causing damage. He spoke about the three-way meeting involving youth services, police and the school, which is ideal because our partnership approach is needed. Obviously, the police can't deal with it themselves, council can't deal with it themselves. You guys can't be expected just to put the pressure on and to deal with it yourselves. I know that there were 22 letters issued to parents, which I was really pleased to hear, because I know that having used that approach before as an inspector to try and deal with recurring neighbourhood community issues where we target the individuals and where the courts are unable to do something, and where the criminal justice system is unable to do something about it, we have found success where issuing the parents' letters, the parents have managed to have an influence. So James arranged for 22 letters to be issued to parents who've been of children who've been identified as involved in antisocial behaviour on Tain High Street. So that will continue. Claire Gardner, PC Claire Gardner, who you may know, I know she's involved in the Mansfield Residents Group, but she's the school liaison officer for Tain Academy. She's a former social worker. She's ideal for the role, and she's fairly passionate about trying to counter the issues on the high street and other things as well. So at this stage, I was satisfied from what James told me yesterday with his plan to counter it. So yeah, if there's anything else, Fiona or anybody else that any actions I could take away to try and deal with it, then I'll welcome that.
Okay, thanks, Jamie. That's very reassuring to hear that. And my third question was really just around COVID. I'm sure other members are the same, constantly get people reporting their neighbours or people that are flouting the rules.
Yeah.
I'm wondering what impact that has on your police services, you know, that you have to respond to these. Are there people breaking the rules, and is it having a huge impact on you and your duties?
Yeah. It's not having a huge impact, but it is a problem. You know, it is happening, and we're responding to those calls on a weekly basis. And for North Highland, there isn't a weekend that goes by where somewhere, and when I speak about North Highland, just to make sure I'm clear, I cover from Inverness up to the top of the country, so Caithness as well. There isn't a weekend goes by that we don't have to intervene at a party, and there are people who are committing offences week in, week out, and being issued tickets, which then the process is, if you keep flaunting the law, then eventually you'll be arrested for reckless conduct, which is a pretty significant offence to be arrested and charged with. But going back specifically to your question, it's not a massive burden on us, but it is. We are still responding to those calls. The 4Es approach to it, but I personally feel, and after watching Miss Sturgeon on the news, I personally feel there is a move towards enforcement. And before we were giving people umpteen chances, if you like, to comply. That's no longer the case. If it's felt that they had, sorry to turn on this radio, if it's felt that they had full knowledge of the law, and probably 99.9% of the population should have by now, if it's felt that they've got full knowledge of the law, then they're issued and they're breaking the law, they're issued a ticket. Yes, it's something that we'll continue to respond to, and I don't think that there's any service delivery issues in relation to our response to those. What I do feel is an issue, and I still receive messages from elected members and key stakeholders, community reps, about public perception. You know, people coming to the area to carry out essential maintenance. You know, that's something that's been reported a few times in the past. So far, the reports that have come in, we've quality assured the story that has been provided from the people who have attended at their second homes for the essential maintenance, and nobody's been charged at this stage. But what I do expect from my staff is that when they attend those reports, we don't just take it at face value. I want to see another piece of circumstantial evidence and police speak, if you like, to back up what they are saying. So if they said they're there to fix a broken toilet, I want proof that toilet was broken in the first place, without being over intrusive, because you know, the public is our biggest ally, obviously, and we can't have the public turn against us. So we need to get the balance right. Does that answer it, Fiona?
That's great, Jamie. Yeah, thank you. That's been really helpful. I've got questions from Pauline and then Maxine.
Yeah. Hi, Jamie. How are you doing? It's nice to see you.
Good point.
I'll tell you what I was going to ask you about was, I think you touched on it because Fiona already mentioned it very well, actually. It's the three-way approach that I was interested in.
Yeah.
You know, when can we start this? Can we start this when the school goes back? If we can possibly do it as soon as possible, because we do, as you know, in Allness and Invergordon, we do have a very high rate of young teenagers, for the want of a better word, going around in groups, destroying things, putting people at fear, as Fiona mentioned earlier. And I think that the sooner we can get this rolled out, obviously, the better. Right. My next thing, Jamie, was the drugs. Great, yeah. I'm delighted that you're finding so many, but as you know, I mean, when we're delivering nowadays, the smell of the drugs, we can't even go into the flat buildings anymore for the smell of drugs. I don't know what you can do about that, but I mean, it's just, to me, since lockdown, it just seems to have got so out of hand now, and I don't know the answer to that. I'm sure you don't either. Yeah. Not much you can do about that. But basically, my biggest one is getting you guys into the schools, you know, to have a meeting with these kids, because it does make a difference. I mean, it was proven before that it made a difference. So if we could do that ASAP, we'd be delighted in our area. Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing, when you say the three-way approach, so just similar to what they're doing in Tane with youth services, police in the school. Yeah, like I could get Jim Rice to contact you direct point. Would it be yourself or somebody else that he should contact?
I don't care who he contacts. One of us will answer him.
Right.
But it would be good if we could get it moving sooner rather than later, because this problem isn't going away.
Aye. Right, I'll get James Rice to contact yourself, Pauline, since you've raised it, if that's okay, and then he could make arrangements to, well, it's either himself or a sergeant to take the lead on that. Yeah, the partnership approach is what is needed. The second thing in relation to drugs, what I would say is how we work, and I spoke about assessment intelligence, how we work is we cannot just action or take action on one piece of intelligence. So if somebody phoned up and said that Jamie Wilson's dealing drugs from his home address, he lives at this address, the police just cannot come along with arms, smash in my door, and then they would find no drugs, I can assure you. But if there are a number of intelligence entries and there is an assessment procedure carried out, and you probably heard this before, but there's an assessment procedure carried out for each piece of intelligence that comes in. So in a nutshell, the greater number of reports for specific addresses, the higher the chance of us being able to take action. So I know that people perceive there's a lack of action because they phone up and they say, I'm smelling cannabis outside. The police can't attend at that time to smell it themselves. They want to remain anonymous. So it goes on the system as an anonymous report of a smell of cannabis, either outside a specific address or on a communal landing or whatever. You're never going to be able to get a sheriff to sign a warrant for that. And even if there's two or three, if it's anonymous reports coming in, or we're unable to have somebody actually speak to drugs being within that address, then your sheriff, your PF, is not going to sign a warrant for it. So it's about credibility of the intelligence that's coming in. So we need people to speak, first of all, and whether they provide their details over the phone and we note a statement over the phone, which is the way it's happening at the moment with COVID anyway, provides us with the greatest opportunity to take action where we actually have a witness. And I understand the public's concern about providing their name. It's obvious why people wouldn't want to provide their name, but at least if they're providing specifics, if they continue to call and say, number 6, High Street, there's a constant smell of cannabis coming out from the living room window. Each time those incidents are recorded on our system, an intelligence entry is processed, sanitized, and the higher number we have, the greater the chance of us being able to execute a warrant. So what I would say is, please ask people to continue to report. It's when they get reporting fatigue that the system starts to fail. And I know that the 101 number is not ideal. I've experienced the problems myself, and it's been reported and reported. And I know that it's being looked at, but Police Scotland, going on a different matter, Police Scotland Service Centre, the 101 operators are under the greatest demand, unprecedented demands at this moment in time. So that explains that, but we need people to keep reporting it, and also Crime Stoppers. Crime Stoppers seems to have lost momentum in terms of its advertising campaign. It's still there. I would like to see more from Crime Stoppers. They're obviously separate from the police, but they have a direct link with us and an established communication flow. So Crime Stoppers 101. It's not a 999 call, unless you see a kilo of cannabis or something being lifted at an address. But yeah, that's the best I could really answer with that just now, Pauline.
That's great, Jamie. I'll tell a lot of them now to try Crime Stoppers as well, because we do keep saying, all of us councillors, we keep saying, you need to report it, you need to report it. And then they come back and say, can you report it? Well, we're not there. So maybe if I can get some of them to use Crime Stoppers now, that would be a good help. Thanks, Jamie.
Yeah. No
Thank you.
Pauline, can I just add in Tane, what we did, because we were experiencing these problems with the youths, we took the lead and called a meeting of police, the head teacher, High Life Highland, social work, can't think there was anyone else, all the councillors, and we set up the meeting to ask for something to be done. And from that, it led then to a little group being set up where they regularly email each other with issues, and they keep in touch and they meet. We're not now part of that, that's gone on, but Helen was instrumental in helping us. You know, we asked her, could you please set up this meeting? We need to do something. So if you speak to Helen, you know, she'll be able to help with that.
Thanks, Fiona. I'll do that. Perfect.
Okay, Maxine.
Hi, Fiona. I wonder if Helen wanted to come in because she had her hand up a couple of times.
She does have her hand up. Yeah, I was going to bring it next. But Helen, do you want to come in just now?
I was actually only going to say that I'd be very happy to facilitate the same setup in Olness that was put in place in Tame, because I think it is working really well.
Yeah,
I'll be in
Helen.
touch. Okay.
Maxine.
Yeah, thanks. Jamie, hi.
Hi.
I wonder if you maybe could give us a brief update on what was happening last night in Olness with the air ambulance. That I think maybe somebody had a coronary, but what I really want to talk to you about is the accident again at the Evington Junction the other day on the A9. You know, as members, we've always had an issue with those junctions, Evington's here, Cross Keene, and Tommy, especially Tommy, and of course Tame had their issues, but something was slightly changed with Tame, which I hope is helping. So I've been contacted quite a lot of people over the years, but when that accident happened, I had quite a flow of social media traffic again. What I've said to people is, look, you know, I tried my best with Tommy, tried my best, did everything I possibly couldn't get anywhere basically, because Scottish Government's criteria on changing the layout junction is based on fatalities. And obviously there was only one at Roskeen and it wasn't thought to have been because of the junction. So what I've said to people is, look, can you hold on? COVID's taken a lot of my time and other members' time at the moment, and the police time and everybody else's. So if we can wait till the end of the year, then I'm just kind of giving you fair warning that I'm going to up it again, because we really do need to get on top of these junctions and see what can be done, and you know, communicate with Bear Scotland, have meetings with them again, and Scottish Government ministers, and see what we can do. So if I can just kind of ask you to, I know you do keep figures, but we will be needing figures at the end of the year for the accidents and what caused them. And maybe you can tell me if you do know what did actually cause that accident that happened with a car on its roof the other day at Evington. Thanks.
I can't give you the cause because there may be a report involved in it. And the air ambulance question, yeah, there was a lady who died last night, but it was a medical matter. And in terms of the stats, we could extract those stats very quickly for you. That wouldn't be an issue. And I know that the criteria is fairly, you know, there's a set criteria in order for changing the road layout or the circumstances or the speed limit. So if the criteria is met, then I'm sure the council would look at changes. But yeah, we could provide whatever details you need. It would just be a case of our analysts extracting that.
Great, thank you. And just to add, just for the record, it's because it's the A9, it's a trunk road, so it's Bear Scotland that's responsible, and that's my problem, getting them to spend money. Thanks, Jane.
Okay, and Derek?
I'll be very brief. It's in regard to the three-way meeting that was arranged in Tame. I love to bask in the kind of reflective glow of that meeting, but the credit's really due to you because it was you who organised it, and I think that should go on the record rather than for people to think that maybe it was our idea. It was a good idea, and it was thanks to you that it was done.
Thank you, Derek. Okay, I don't think we have any more questions now for you, Jamie, but thank you for coming along, and thank you for the report and for all the work that you do, and for the way that you do respond really well, Jamie. You always do to any issues that we that we bring up. Your response is always really quick and really helpful, and I thank you for that.
You're welcome. Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on now to item number 4, which is the school estates improvement update. But Robert Campbell has had to deal with another issue at the moment. He will come back into the meeting. I'm not sure at what time, but Helen will let me know when he's available. So if the committee would agree, we'll move that further down the agenda and we'll bring it up when he's back. So then I'll move on to item number 5, which is the Area Roads Capital Programme, which is on pages 10 to 48 of your papers. And we've got Ian Moncrief here, the Roads Operations Manager, to answer any questions that anyone has. Hello, Ian, you here? Yep.
Hi. Yeah, hi. Just to give you a quick, brief rundown, we discussed the capital programmes at the ward business meetings on the 11th of January. Essentially, you'll see that within each programme there's red lines drawn. At the time of writing the programme, we didn't know what our budgets were going to be. So the programme was based on the baseline budget of 7.2 million. Schemes below the red line would be funded if additional funds became available. Since the committee report was submitted, there was a paper sent to the Economy Infrastructure Committee on the 4th of February, and which was approved. And just to summarise that, the underspent baseline of 7.2 million from this year can be rolled forward. The baseline of 7.2 million plus 10 million for the next year and the year after. That capital budget is split into a strategic road network of 3.7 million for larger schemes, these initially being assessed by HQ and then coming to committee. Locally, all the operational areas are to get £3.6 million across all the areas, which equates very approximately to about 60k for both Ward 6 and Ward 7. It's my intention that if approved, to simply spend that money on the schemes below the red lines. In addition, there was 100k per ward for next year and the year after. This was for members' discretion, although it must be road related. And again, I would suggest to members, you may wish to consider the schemes below the red line that I can't fund from either my baseline or my enhanced capital budget. I understand that the members' suggestions have to be taken to committee, and a quick move on that basis would be much appreciated. Obviously, we have a very packed season anyway, and with extra money, it means that we have to tie up extra time and resources. There was also £500,000 allocated to fleet improvements and £100,000 to support active travel scheme applications. The capital programme was basically put together. Initially, any projects that had been deferred went in first, and then after that, it was schemes were selected on the basis of the Scottish Road Maintenance Condition Surveys. This is basically a vehicle fitted out with sensors and lasers. It records various different types of road defects. That data is then manipulated into a score, and by looking at the road categories, you can identify the worst defects in each category. The outcome of this is that by following that approach, you get the best value in terms of pounds per vehicle kilometres. So I've already been through all the individual schemes with both of the ward business meetings, and it's really just up to any questions.
Okay, thank you, Ian. Just before I move on to the questions, I'd like to make a few comments. And because myself and Alistair Rind did meet with Tracy RA to talk about the condition of the roads in Tain and Easter Ross, which we feel are particularly bad, and I think members feel the same in Cromarty Firth. Now, our understanding is that our roads are much worse than anywhere else, and this wasn't based on paranoia or exaggeration. We felt, having spoken to officers in charge of the roads just now and previously as well, so John Mackay, that we don't get the service that we deserve, and we get a lesser service than other places. Having spoken to Tracy, she agrees that Easter Ross does miss out for various different reasons, particularly because the staff in Ross and Cromarty are based in Dingwall, which is quite a distance from us. We're very much at the end of the line there. And if you look to Sutherland, the staff are based quite far away from us as well. So we don't really fit in either area. We're always at the end of the line when it comes to work being done. Also, in terms of the disaggregation of the budget, the fact that it goes by length of roads really has a very poor effect on our area. It doesn't do us any favours at all. And she has said before that this would do us harm to disaggregate the budget, and that we would suffer the most. So the fact that she's actually come out and said that, you know, just proves that our continual complaining is not exaggerating, or is not, you know, look at us, we don't get as much as anyone else. We don't get as much as anyone else. Our roads are in far worse condition. But what we said to Tracy, I mean, you've got all these different schemes, yep, that we'd love to get done, but what we want done is our potholes filled. We have craters like that. I would quite happily give up every scheme for this year just to get our potholes done. If you could just come, fill them with hot tar, and I'm quite sure that's what people in our ward would also say. They would support us in that, and that's what I want to see done. I don't know how the other members feel about that, but also we've set up a meeting with the leader of the council and with the ECO in charge of roads to talk about this meeting that we had with Tracy, to find a way forward, because we can't continue to allow us to get a second-class service to be worse off than everyone else. And I think it would be good if all the members in Easter Ross joined together and we fight hard to get a much better service for our roads. I think it's something we have to take forward as an area too. So I'll move on to the questions. And first of all, we've got Derek.
Yeah, I think just to back up what you're saying there, one of the things that struck me was a few years ago when we had the beast from the east, it was a very small area that was worst affected, and the worst affected part was the whole of Tane and Easter Ross. And I think at that stage, the condition of the roads deteriorated significantly, and that wasn't factored in. It wasn't factored into the requirements for road maintenance. It was just treated in the same way as it had been treated in the past. But I think that the condition of the roads is truly shocking, and I think some cognizance has to be taken of what happened a few years ago. And
oh, Derek, you're frozen. Oh, we'll maybe come back to Derek. We'll move on. I've got Mike. We'll move on to Mike and we can come back to Derek.
Thank you, Fiona. I can assure you that being close to Dingwall doesn't improve that much with regard to the amount of work that's been done, because my ongoing bugbear with regard to the back road from Everton to Dingwall has got absolutely horrendous now. Gary has said that he would do some major urgent pothole repairs. But what I look at that road is you can see all the side roads, and I'm glad to see that some of the side roads are getting done. But you know, it's really terrible to think that back road from Dingwall, it really hasn't been done for the last, I don't know, good number of years, 10 years, maybe more. And it's a major route. And Maxine knows that. I think you replied, Maxine, to that lady that stays up at Woodlands or Pialig or whatever else, and she wrote a really good letter or email about the road, and I think that was forwarded to you as well, Ian. But I think that back road somehow or other must be taken into even out of your planned works, and make it an emergency, because it really is getting to that stage where the road is just breaking up. And the other one I've noticed, it's not on the, maybe down under just a casual repairs, but if you come into Alness these days, the first roundabout nearest Edmonton, it's pretty bad, and along at Liddles and all that, it's really not terribly good. So it seems to be the through roads that, okay, we've got to get the side roads done as well, but that through roads are starting to show wear and tear. I don't know how you tackle that, Ian, but there certainly is one that needs to be looked at quite seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I'll just move back to Derek. We've got him back in now. Hi, Derek.
Apologies. I've been having problems for a few days with just an intermittent connection. It's there 1 minute and gone the next. No, I think that was the major point I'd wanted to make in support of what you said yourself. But if there is a vehicle coming to check the surface of the roads, any time it could make it to Tower Street in Tain, I'd love to see it. Thanks, Ian.
Okay, I'll just go through the questions, Ian, and then you can answer them. I'll just take them all together. Maxine.
Okay, thanks, Fiona. Yeah, we have got a major problem in our ward, and you're saying you've got the same in yours. You know, I've been sending everything on to Gary, and he's probably been inundated with my mails and complaints about potholes. It got so ridiculous that I was fed up seeing the photographs of floating ducks in potholes in Invergordon High Street, and somebody built a Lego oil rig and put it in one, and yeah, people's imagination was going wild. But you know, I kind of felt last night I had to go and put something on social media, because you know, members were getting inundated with this and we weren't moving forward. So you know, I asked to Gary why it wasn't happening, why the potholes that I've been reporting for the last 4 weeks are not getting touched. And he tells me that you really stretched, that COVID's an issue, people are shielding. He also told me that he had to second people to the burials last week. I wonder if you could maybe speak about that a little bit, because we can't afford to have people taken away from our roads. You know, I mean, we know they do gritting in the morning and then they're trying to do a few potholes, and we can't have them taken to another department as well. So yeah, I kind of echo what Fiona says. If there's any way that we can actually put this capital programme on hold and spend the capital money on filling in potholes, you know, that's what our constituents would want right now, because you can't drive along a road without either hitting a pothole if it's in the dark or trying to avoid one. And these are going to cause accidents, let alone the Zurich insurance policy premium that's going to go sky high with all the claims. So we need to do something. However, if you come back to us and tell us you can't do that because capital is about resurfacing, and you're saying that you can move something up above the line, I'm looking at page 13 here, then obviously you've got a couple of places in there from Ward 7 and one from Ward 6. And whilst I'd love to be quite selfish and move the Heathfield Road up above the line, I'm looking at which areas serve the most people. And to be honest, a lot of these are rural roads, except for Cromarty View, and Cromarty View does take a hit with a lot of traffic and people living up there. So maybe it would be wise to move that above the line. But can I also ask you, have you looked at Gordon Terrace? I'm wondering why Gordon Terrace is not on for resurfacing at some point, because it is littered with filled in potholes and bumps. So maybe you could, if you haven't looked at Gordon Terrace, have a look and see if it needs to be added in the future. So maybe come back later, Fiona, if need be. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Maxine. Alistair.
Sorry, good morning.
Good morning.
Is that me? Good morning.
That's you, yep, we
Well,
can hear you.
Thanks for the report. I mean, it's the longest report in the agenda today. An amazing waste of paper. We say, you know, page 10 to page 49, several maps at the end of it. I mean, we all know our areas, and I don't see there was any need for that. Anyway, let's get to the nitty gritty. you know, as Derek's saying, as Fiona's saying, as other members are saying, the roads are in a disastrous state at this moment in time. And when you, after the snow, it's made them 10 times worse than they were. And it's a very serious situation we have, certainly in our ward here in Tain. And I know we've talked several times about St. Gatha's Place in Tain, and that's on the programme here. Well, my view today is that that should come out, and that shouldn't happen because it's not a major road. And when I look at the condition of Tower Street, that Tower Street's a sheer and out of disgrace. That's the entrance to the town, and that's where we should, the limited resources that we have should be put there right away rather than on St. Gatha's Place. So I would be happy to see St. Gatha's Place coming out of there. But not only that, you know, we've got Tower Street, we've got Canmore Way, we've got Moor Farm. We've got a severe problem right through with potholes in every part. You couldn't name a street that doesn't have a pothole now, and it's very dangerous for the travelling public. It's also dangerous for those that walk on the roads when the pavements are in such a state with the snow. So we need to address it. And I saw yesterday when I passed the Almas Junction, the hot box, if that's what you call it there. That's not really the solution now. That hot box, you know, the stuff comes out of it eventually, and it's not really a solution. What we need to do is look at the best value. Now, the council's great with this word best value. So best value is not taking a car and shoving it in a pothole and leaving it to come out in 6 or 8 days' time. That's not best value. Best value is to cut it out properly and to proper tar in and seal it. And that's what's wrong with a lot of the roads, is that we don't seem to, when we do new tar, we don't seem to seal the centre, so the road starts to crack from the centre in. And somebody told me the reason we don't seal the centres of the road now is due to motorbikes, that they may slide on it. I don't know if that's true or not. But certainly, as Fiona said, we had that meeting with Tracy Addy. She accepted accepted the situation as far as Tain is concerned. We are last to be thought of. And I'll just come to this business about men being taken off to do burials. One man on some occasions. One man on some occasions have been taken off. I mean, I know one man's down today in Ballantor dealing with something. But that's only one man that's been taken off. And for us to get an email saying that Gary has been taken off to deal with burials, as far as I know, Gary's had nothing to do with burials. And it was only due to the situation of 2 of the burial team getting COVID and had to self-isolate. And that's the truth of the matter. And that's what we must always be, is truthful in the information we give out. But anyway, I am so disappointed about the situation of our roads in this Tain and Easter Ross ward. And, you know, we are the ones, the councillors, that are getting the blame for it on social media. I don't do social media, but people tell me about it, that people are blaming the councillors for it. And really, I don't see it's my fault about it. We're reporting them all the time. All that they come out with a wee drop of wet tar, put it in, the potholes back in a few days' time. We need to take positive action. We need to be positive. There's too much negativity. We need positivity, and that's what our people want to see. Thank you.
Thank you, Alistair. Caroline.
Thank you, Chair. I would normally say, I'm not going to repeat what my previous colleagues have said, but I wouldn't be sitting here doing my job properly if I don't say something. I agree with everything that's been said before. I would disagree with Councillor Rind. The tar does not stay in the hole for 2 or 3 days. I witnessed tar being put in a hole recently that was in the hole for less than 12 hours and it was gone. Then people come and stop us and complain about the tar on their cars, the waste of public money. I don't know how, I mean, I've been a councillor for over 20 years now. We have had this conversation every single year, the waste of time and energy it is filling potholes with tar that's back on the road in less than a day after it's put in. Either the way we're putting it in is wrong or it's not the right way to do it in the first place. I'm not a technical expert. I'm sorry about the phone. I'm not a technical expert. I don't know what, the best way of dealing with it is, but there's got to be a better way. There can't be a busier stretch of road in Easter Ross than coming off the A9 to that roundabout at Liddell, coming up over the railway bridge and into the High Street, going through the High Street and out round the roundabout. It is pitiful. absolutely pitiful. 3 years ago, I was assured by a roads manager that the potholes round the roundabout at the Westford roundabout had been sorted. They were never sorted at that time and have never been sorted properly since. And anyone will be hard pushed to find a worse part of road that is the main thoroughfare through a really busy town than what we have got just now. And incidentally, the white lines that were promised for the little roundabout are still not there, and that's 5 years we've been waiting for them, and we still haven't got them. So on top of the fact that we've got all these potholes and people trying to avoid them, we then have people who are not aware where they should stop, where the line should be, because there is absolutely nothing there for people who are not familiar with the area to know where to stop. And I run over, but I've got to say something. Every single day, we're being tackled in the supermarket by people who indeed are blaming us as individuals, the 4 of us, and the 3 team members will be getting the same, that we are to blame because it's constantly being put down to us making the decisions about how the money is spent. It doesn't matter how we make the decisions at these meetings about how the money is spent. Actually, that has to be borne out and something done about it. And I would say the #1 issue in our ward is potholes at the moment. It's a huge issue for our people, you know, that we represent.
Okay, thank you, Caroline. Ian, I'll move on to you. You can obviously see how passionate we all are, each and every member in Cromarty, Firth and Tyne and Easter Ross, that this is a major issue within our area that has to be dealt with.
Okay, yes, thank you. I'll just reply to the issues as they came up. Councillor Robertson, I would suggest that Ward 5 has the worst roads in terms of the cost to repair them than any other area or ward in Ross and Cromarty. I appreciate that there's concerns that you have less men, less plant, less money. There isn't a Tyne and Easter Ross budget. It's all Ross and Cromarty budget. Each year I come along to you and I explain how I've set out my capital budget, and it's based on the road length. Every single councillor wants a different percentage, a higher percentage of the capital budget. For me, that's the only way I can now get that through, because if you want more capital money, then that has to come off one of the other areas. And clearly now with 3 committees, we can't have that one discussion. Tracy was quite right. If we disaggregate the budget, there will be less flexibility in Tyne and Easter Ross. In particular, I can give examples of that. Just now at the recent snow event, there was plant sent through and men sent through from Dingwall to assist. That's all Ross and Cromarty money. If it was disaggregated, that would be charged against Tyne and Easter Ross budget. As we divide into smaller and smaller areas, there becomes less and less flexibility. In terms of labour, there's 44 men across Ross and Cromarty, 22 are based in Ward 5. I think you have, is it 11 or 10, and Greenhill has 1 more than you. Sorry, you have 9 and there's 1 more in Greenhill. Those men are based on the winter routes. If the councillors are going to change the winter policy, we will have to change the number of men. At present, I cannot afford, at the start of the financial year, I cannot afford to pay for materials because the revenue budget is so thin. So straight away, there's insufficient. I can't afford contractors because I can't afford to pay for them. So at the start, I'm in a game I can't win. We're all in a game we cannot win. And I appreciate that your concerns. I would appreciate, you know, to know the outcome of the meeting between Malcolm MacLeod and the leader. You know, we've had discussions with Tracy, and I've also briefed Malcolm MacLeod on the problems I've got in Ross and Cromarty. Any help that I can get in terms of more plant, more men, and more cash, and any combination of that would be greatly appreciated. Councillor MacLeod, the beast from the east. Yeah, it was kind of similar to the event 2 or 3 years ago. Tyne and Easter Ross were quite badly hit in comparison to Dingwall and the Black Isle. I'll just run down the plant and assistance that Green Hill forwarded to you. There was on the 9th of February, we sent through a footpath tractor, a tractor and blade, 2 additional gritters, and extra staff were put on standby to assist with blue light emergencies. We also put in additional pre-grits in the area, including footpaths. And there was 2 contractors with tractors and ploughs employed to clear to remove the snow as well. The following day, we then put in an additional 2 squads from Pat Monroe to assist. And somewhere in between those 2 days, I'm not quite sure where, there was a 3rd contractor block brought in with a plough and blade. It's true that after winter, because of the freeze thaw action and the drainage, that's where most of the roads start to break up. That's always going to be the same. And with the budget I've got, I can't fix that. All I can do is continue to do as best we can. And I would like to make a point to say that if it wasn't for Gary and Donny and his squads, would be in a far worse condition. They've done, especially over the last few weeks, they've really pulled out all the stops. I'll check Tower Street in Tyne. I also note the comment that you would prefer not to have a capital programme, but to simply have patching. I would say that's not the way to go, but if that's what you want to do, that can be arranged. Councillor Finlayson, yeah, I would agree with you. Being close to Dingwall doesn't affect the work. If you take that argument, then the very bottom of Loch Alsh would see no men and no work and no cash. The men are in terms of the road mileage, the men are pretty evenly balanced between Dingwall and Tyne and Easter Ross. The number of men we have in each depot is based on the number of routes we have, winter routes. We need the men to drive the gritters. We need to have spare men to drive the gritters within the GB domestic driving hours. It's a never-ending battle, I'm afraid. Those men, we can't afford extra men. And if we had more winter routes, we would have to employ more men to drive. So the winter policy dictates the number of men in each depot. There is always a list of work that we simply cannot get to. And firstly, I would like to apologise to councillors that I've not managed to get round to that. Councillor Smith, yeah, I would accept there's major problems in both wards. We've discussed these problems at the ward business meeting. We've prepared the plans. We've shown you the plans. You've agreed them at the ward business meeting. And I now note that you want to, well, collectively, you want to dismiss the capital programme and concentrate on patching. I know that there are going to be some very unhappy people who are relying on roads that are in that capital programme. I accept that that's the way it's going though. Gary is stretched. He has no vacancies. His establishment is full up. He has had men shielding. He has had one man supporting burials, and he has been gritting. But if you take the 9 men and you put one man onto burials, then that's only leaving 8. before we start with the shielding. We assisted John Mackay in amenities. He assists us, we assist him. I guess it's down to, do we bury the dead or not? The recent tragedy in Allness Depot has shown that the COVID-19 can strike just about anywhere, at any time, to anybody. And we tried to keep that service going. Yes, we can move Heathfield Road above the red line, but again, do you want a capital programme? You've indicated you don't, and it's just going to be spent on patching. We really need that steer. That's going to make a major difference to what we do. Councillor Rind, I put the maps in because in previous years, perhaps not yourself, other councillors said, I don't recognise that section of road. So I can take the maps out for next year. That's not a problem. It is a very serious situation we have in the road network, especially after the snow and ice. I can take St Duthie's Place out in favour of Tower Street, but again, that wasn't what was agreed at the ward business meeting. The other streets you mentioned, we can have a look at for patching. I would suggest that the hot box is still a solution. We need hot tar. By the time I would suggest we actually need a bigger hot box. What we find is that with the men we've got and all the other work we have to do, there's insufficient time to program in enough time and resources to deal with, say, taking a 26 tonner and filling it up with hot tar. We still have to shovel that tar out to put into the potholes for surface dressing, for surface patching. I would prefer to hire the Karcher planer, which is sitting in Dingwall. It's very effective, it's very quick, and generally we don't use it in the past because budget restrictions. Every year I'm told stop spending. So one of the first things that goes is plant. If we decide we're going to spend the capital budget on patching, then clearly that will reverse most of those decisions. I'm sorry you're getting the blame. I can assure you that Facebook is not a very positive app for my men either. I have had road officers who can't go into local shops. I've had men who can't go into the local pubs. I've had wives and families getting abuse, both online and verbally to their faces, because people do not seem to have a filter on these social media. I can appreciate what you're saying. We need positive action and not negativity. Yes, I would agree with that. But here's the bottom line. I can only spend the money that I'm given, and each year I overspend my budget, and I've got no option but to overspend it from the 1st of April. So until that revenue budget is addressed, I have to fight a rearguard action every single day to try to reduce my overspend. And Councillor Wilson, yes, I agree with everything you say. All I can say is that if we don't have a capital programme, we can concentrate more on the patching. So I guess it's really down to, are we going to have a capital programme or are we just going to concentrate on patching?
Okay, thank you, Ian. Because it's such an important subject and it's something we do need to sort out, there's members who want to come back. So I'll go back to Maxine and then Mike.
Thank you. And you know what, I feel for Ian. I feel for Ian every single year when he tells us he doesn't have enough money, and he doesn't. And we're only 7 members, but do you know what? We need to do something about this. It's not right. We can't just disaggregate a budget that wasn't set right in the first place for Ross and Clonmacnoise. We can prove that we've got the evidence that our roads are worse than many other areas and they need sorted. And until they get to that plateau level where each year then Ian can have a capital programme for resurfacing, and he can have his revenue budget and carry on as normal. Until we get to that point, then it's really, really serious. So can I suggest as an action that the 7 of us meet with leaders and with the directors and ecos for the roads department, community services, because we need more money, and we can't accept this. And if that means we've got to keep fighting our colleagues in full council, then we'll do it. So that's the first thing, because it's not Ian's fault, and he's doing his best with the small amount of money he has, and I wouldn't want his job for anything in the world. Sure, he wouldn't want ours either. But yeah, social media. So I didn't actually finish what I was saying about that. So last night I did go on and did put a post, and I was defending the men. I did say we had 6 to 8 because I thought we had, but I forgot we got that other guy in. But we still only got 9. It's still not enough. And people obviously were saying, well, why can't the contractors do it? Well, because we need the money. It all comes down to money. So I think as much as I want my roads resurfaced, and just the record, I did say, as much as I'd like Heathfield, because I live on it, I would prefer to have Cromarty View above the line. But given that I think we're going to maybe take the decision today to maybe suspend the capital programme, maybe just for this year, because we are desperate need of patching. I mean, Fiona will need to go around and take a vote on that, but because of that, then nothing's going to go above the line anyway. I think that we are going to have to do the patching because that's what our constituents are calling upon us to do. And whilst that's going to upset some people, the residents that live on those streets that we're going to get their roads resurfaced, we've got to think about the greater good, and we've got to think about the others of people, pounding in our inboxes, not just the ones that, a few people that live on one road and maybe have to wait a bit longer. So that's my thoughts anyway. Fiona, back to you.
Maxine, and then Mike and Derek. I think, did you have your hand up again, Derek?
I did, but I took it back down again because
okay.
I think Maxine's probably said what needed to be said.
Okay, Mike, you want to come back?
Yes, I certainly agree with Maxine there, and I do appreciate the hard job that Ian has. There's no doubt about that. I think he made a very, very good case for the retention of Ross and Cromarty in his arguments with regard to economies of scale and stuff like that. I remember standing up the full council trying to get members to say don't split up Ross and Cromarty, and unfortunately there was folk from councillors from all over the Highlands as well voting in that particular one, and we lost the battle there. But economies of scale, I've been involved in that for many, many years when I was still in the job, and it was always argued that economies of scale is the way forward, and that certainly is something we need to take cognizance of. So with regard to the patching and doing away with the capital programme, is there any way, Ian, of finding out just how much it would cost in comparison to filling the potholes to continuing with the capital programme? Because we don't want to sort of throw out the baby with the bathwater when there is definitely some roads that are needing to get done as well. So is it possible to consider just what the costs would be to do a major potholing exercise without using up all the capital monies? I think that is something we might need to have to consider quite seriously. But I'll just leave it at that just now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Derek, your hand's back up now.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's really what's concerning me is if we do come by extra funding, but Ian doesn't have any more men. I think they're already pretty much flat out as it is. So we have to be kind of realistic. If we've got the same 4 men in Tainan, our bit of Easter Ross, they physically can't do any more than they're already doing. So we have to think about how we're going to spend the money, as well as can we get the money in. I realise the most important thing is to get the money to start off with, but we have to be realistic about how much extra load can be put on guys that are already pretty much on their knees.
Okay, Caroline and Alistair, you both have your hands up. Are they new hands?
Yep, mine is. Yep.
Yep.
I was just going to say, on the back of what Derek said, what I was thinking in similar lines. So if Ian is in a position where he has got too few men and they're already stretched with what they're doing, they're obviously, if we say today that we, and I agree with everything Maxine's saying, we need to fight our corner to get more resources. But if we say today that potholes are the biggest issue we've got and we want them fixed properly, there's nothing to stop us buying in that expertise from outside, getting a third-party organisation to come in and do it. If we do a programme of where the worst potholes are and have a company come in and do them properly, I'm not saying that the council guys are not doing them properly, but if we do proper patching and cover these areas and do it once and for all properly, I think it'll stand us in good stead for the future. And there's nothing wrong with going out and buying in the expertise. Any normal business would do that. If your own staff are stretched, then you go to a third-party organisation outside, you get them to tender for the work, we get them to stick to the budget, we don't give them an open budget, we get a price for what we want done, and then we hold them to that price and get them to do these potholes once and for all properly with proper patching, with a proper machine. And it's ridiculous if we've got a machine sitting in a garage ourselves that we haven't got the ability to use it. That's just nonsense, having plants sitting there. But I would be fully supportive of Maxine that we need to, to take this further and to be looking for the extra resources that we need to try and do something about improving our lot.
Okay, thanks, Caroline. Alistair, is that a new hand?
Yeah, I was just going to say, well, circumstances change, and that's what changed after last week's snow and how it showed a lot more roads to be in a very poor state. And that's why I was saying about St. Death's Place, not a well-trafficked road, Tower Street, a very well-trafficked road. And I also say about this plant that Ian talked about, this planer, if I understand, the planer is ours, it's in Dingwall. So what is the cost, just to take it out, to get a man to drive it, so the man's getting paid, so it's just to take the planer out and get the job done. Thank you.
Okay, and then finally, Pauline.
Yeah, I was just going to say, well, actually, Alistair said, I think this latest snowfall has given us even more to deal with, and it is a huge issue for us. This potholes everywhere. I mean, it's constant. It's in our emails, it's in our Facebook, which I agree, Ian, is awful. It is the most awful place these days because everybody's miserable, so they're taking out on absolutely everybody else. Gary, I have to say, does a fantastic job. He always answers us. He tries his very, very best. But he's just not got enough people. So I would absolutely agree with what everyone said and be happy to try and get that sorted, because that is, unfortunately, just now our biggest issue.
Okay, thanks, Pauline. Okay, so what we're taking from this, Ian, is first of all, the first action point is I already have a meeting set up with Malcolm and the leader of the council to talk about this issue, particularly following my meeting with Tracy. What I can do is get that meeting changed so that we're all invited as an Easter Ross committee to attend that meeting. So the date's already set. I haven't got the date just now. But if we could task Helen with sorting that out on our behalf, that everyone's invited to that meeting. If we find that the majority can't make that time, then we'll look at another time. But we have to get it sorted as soon as possible, that we can make our feelings known. And I'd like to invite Mark Rogers along to that meeting too. Mark's here at our meeting today. He's the ECO who is our support to our area, and he has been messaging me saying that he is taking note of what's going on here. So I'd like to invite Mark to that meeting and just wonder, would you like to add anything in here, Mark?
I've certainly taken notes of the strength of feeling that have been expressed today by members, and I hope I've captured them reasonably well. It's a really difficult situation. I've got every sympathy for many of the points that Ian made. Budgets are extremely challenging when I think about some of the challenges that we have about maintaining our non-school buildings. With the amount of budget that's available to that, I feel his heartfelt expressions quite keenly in some respect, and I expect that they are shared by a range of other people. I mean, I think, I'm happy, and I will have a conversation with Malcolm separately today, just to sort of reflect on the strength of feeling, because, official minutes of meetings aren't always reflective of the strength of the discussion that's taken place. They are merely there to sort of acknowledge the key points of discussion and decisions that have been taken. Yes, I mean, I will take that forward. I'm happy to be invited along to any meeting if that's what members of the committee want. You know, I'm here to provide objective support and advice and guidance to members, and that doesn't just include attendance at meetings. You know, you're welcome to raise issues of concern at any time with me. But I suppose the challenge for people like Ian and I is to try and get that objective balance between doing what in an ideal world you would accept, irrespective of our different professions, would be what would be the optimum solution for a group of assets, whether it's a road or a building. You know, the principles are exactly the same, faced with the challenge of quite tight budgetary constraints. So when Ian is sitting there saying, you know, he has all of those challenges and would like to be doing things, you know, that's his genuine opinion. There's no doubt about that whatsoever. And I think, you know, it's a challenge for him that he has to constraints that means that he's effectively delivering a suboptimal service, where he and indeed all of his staff do not want to be doing that. I hope Ian would agree with these comments. Maybe he'll come back in a second and say that. You know, that is the kind of the challenge of the situation that we are trying to address here. I mean, I suppose that, you know, the biggest challenge from a strategic point of view is to try and make this work across the piece. I see Ian at my other strategic committee, and I'm sure he goes to plenty of area committees where everybody feels equally as strongly about the challenges facing roads, and that is why there was additional capital investment money made available at the last budget to reflect, I think, a number of years of underinvestment. But you know, we have a similar issue in relation to our non-HRA buildings, the 1,200 buildings that we've got, that, you know, years of underinvestment because of budgetary pressures do eventually lead you to a situation where the amount of investment that you're required to carry out to bring something back to a reasonable, tolerable standard, not necessarily the best standard, is very significant. And I think that's where this council, along with a number of other councils, finds itself at the present. I hope that is useful context. I think it would be only fair to let Ian have a quick comment on my comments, if you like, in case he wants to rebut anything or give me a telling off for misrepresenting roads as a profession. I hope I haven't overstepped the mark, Ian, but thanks for your comments, and thank you, members.
Okay, I'll just, first of all, Mark, thanks for that. No, I would agree with everything you've said. And if I can, Chair, I'll maybe just come back to some of these comments that have been made. First of all, Councillor Smith, thanks very much for your social media defence of our men. That means an awful lot when they see that and their families see that on Facebook. Councillor Finlayson, again, I would agree with you about the economies of scale, and considering the cost of patching compared with the cost of a full capital programme, perhaps a way forward would be to keep the red lines as we see. We can take St Duth's Place out, Councillor Rind, if you want, and to use the additional 3.6 million, which is approximately 60k per ward, as for capitalised patching. I don't know if that would be would be favourable to you. The other issues that were raised, how much extra work can the DL do when they're actually on their knees? I have been very resistant to putting work out to contractors in the past, simply because I cannot balance my budget from day one. I discussed this with Tracy, and Tracy agreed that I can now use contractors. I then spoke to Gary, and contractors were planning to put Scottsburn, Fern Junction, and we weren't going to put St Duth's Place out to contractors. That would allow the DLO to concentrate on permanent pothole repairs once we're outside of winter. We may actually have to bring in a contractor to assist the DLO in filling potholes in the top of that. A lot depends on whether you want to go ahead with a capital scheme or in part, in full, or cancel it entirely. There was talk about the planer. I apologise to Councillor Rind, and I'm not sure who else it was. Wilson, the planer isn't ours. We have to hire that in and supply our own man. It costs £250 a day. That's cheaper than hiring in the more traditional large planers you see on the large motorway schemes with the tracks on them and the big chutes and the lorries all over the place. This can be put on the back of a trailer. It can be taken to site at 50 miles an hour. And once it's on site, it can plane out a section of road pretty quickly. We have used it in the past, but at £250 a day, that cost rapidly mounts up. It's not actually ours, so we have to hire that in. In terms of how much it costs per day, our labour rate is around about £23 an hour. You know, when you take an 8-hour day, you know, plus the £250 a day, that gives you some indication of how much it costs. I think that's about it. I mean, what I think we really need to look at now is whether we're going to cancel the programme entirely, reserve part of the funds for patching and allow some schemes to go ahead, or approve the scheme.
Okay, thank you, Ian. And we can go around members and get their views on that. What I would propose, certainly in our ward, because one of the areas that you talk about, Scotsburn Road, is an area of major patching that needs done, that should therefore remain in the capital programme. So I think the combination of both might be what would suit our ward, in my view, better. So we have part of the capital plan, but we take other items like St Duthas out, and we use that money to deal with the list of potholes that members will give you as the priority. We have to make sure that, you know, that these areas that we've highlighted get done within that funding. I think that would be essential, that we know the money would stretch to deal with these particularly bad areas. So that would be my proposal. What I'll do is I'll just go around each member. Normally the clerk would do it, but there's not that many here. So if I just go around each member and ask for their views, what they want to do, so that you, Ian, will get a clear steer from the committee of what we want to do. So I'll move first in, I'll go through the Tyne and Easter Ross just because I'm seeing you there. Derek, what would be your view?
Okay, I think I've asked Ian before, but it's come back up again. The St Duthas place is only 90 metres, and I don't think it was a big amount of money involved there. So I'm actually wondering whether there is any point in taking it out. Would it give us much more money to spend on potholes? And if we're not going to resurface it, how much are we going to have to spend filling in the potholes on St Duthas Place? It's in a very poor state of repair and has been for a number of years. It's been on this programme for ages and without ever managing to get done. What we do have is the extra money, that the £100,000 that's coming to each ward this year and next year, and certainly I think that should be applied to getting the potholes filled in. Yeah, can Ian tell us how much it'll cost to resurface St Duthas Place?
Yeah, can I just, before we go in, I can see how actually this is going to prove really difficult now, going round, because you haven't got a clear proposal, Derek, and that may be the same for others, because Ian, we don't know what we're going to get for our money. You know, we're not informed on this.
Would you prefer me to resubmit or to attend the ward business meeting to discuss it?
I think that might be better, although you need to know quite quickly.
Yeah, time's an issue.
Yeah, that's time is of the essence. We want this done.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Fiona. Sorry,
what it's been suggested is we could have a final proposal in writing in the chat, but and that's a good proposal, but I don't think we're actually getting to a final proposal at the moment of what we want to do, because we can't take an informed decision. That's what we need to do. We need to be informed what we'll get for our money. Basically, in what we all want, I don't think anyone would disagree, we want our potholes dealt with. We want all the ones that are a big problem at the moment, we want them filled in properly. And if there's any money left over, then you do the bits in the capital plan. I think that might sum it up.
Yeah, I know, sorry, interrupting, but yeah, and if Ian could put something to us this afternoon, maybe in an email of how he proposes we do that. I mean, clearly St Duffus is 90, whatever that is, meters, and like the Evington Road is 450 meters. It might be that we only do half of that Glenglass Road. You know, whatever we have to do to get the potholes sorted. And Karen's right. If we don't have the guys that can do it, we don't have enough men. We need to take a contractor in. But we need to do this in the next few weeks. That is the key thing.
Okay, so I think my proposal would be that Ian takes away the decision that we have taken that we want our potholes to be the priority in both wards. We want them all dealt with. We want them filled in properly, not with coal tar. If there's money left over, that may not use up all the capital plan, then we want you to work on the capital plan with the items that we've identified as being our priority, or whatever the money is left over can be used. But you've got to take into account the additional monies that we've got coming forward as well in dealing with the potholes. And if you could take that away and work that into a proposal today and come back to us with how that would look, then we can agree that. If I just go around, that would be my proposal.
Yeah, that would be great, Fiona. Can I just say, though, I would probably have to declare an interest if we're talking about contractors. As you can imagine, Pat Monroe's already been, right. So just to note that. Okay, well, we'll have that noted. Thank you, Pauline. Okay, is there any member that disagrees with that proposal?
No.
Right. No,
but one thing we have to remember, I know one or two roads that are just one big pothole.
Yeah.
And really, I don't know if that'll be taken into account or not, but yeah, certainly that's a good proposal, I think.
Absolutely, Mike, and I think that's why at the very, very beginning of this discussion, I did say that, you know, just stop the capital plan and use the money for the potholes, because I think it'll all be going in there. We have roads as well that are just one pothole. But there's roads near where I live we're going to have to close down completely and cut off all access because you can't get past anymore. So yeah, I think it will use up all. But if you could look at this, Ian, and get a list from members of where we know where all the major problem areas are in our ward and that we want dealt with. I'll just there's a note here from Fiona. Do you want to come in, Fiona, and as a clerk?
Yes, sorry, I just wanted to be clear about whether you are deciding to, you know, are you deferring this, or are you wanting to sort of delegate authority to, say, you know, the relevant ECO in consultation with yourselves via ward business meeting? Or I just wasn't completely clear.
Yeah.
It seems like you want to make a decision in the future, but by what mechanism?
Okay, so we
you know, bring it back to another meeting of the area committee, or
we know that times, no, we know times of the essence, no, we can't wait for another committee. So we want to change the recommendation that instead of doing the capital plan, we want our potholes patched. And we want to use the money for that first, and if there's anything left over, then we can use it on the capital plan. So we want Ian to take that away and show us how that looks in terms of money.
Would that come in on Fiona McBain's point? Would that then need to be delegated to the appropriate ECO in consultation? Because obviously that's a description of how to make the decision rather than the final decision on the programme, and clarify that it qualifies as capital spend as well.
Yeah, I think it would have to go there, having come to members, for our agreement as wards. Fiona, would you be happy with that in terms of the decision making?
Okay, so what you want to do is to task Ian with drawing up a new programme to find out the cost of the pothole, filling all the potholes that you want filled. Is Ian happy with that?
I think, to be honest, given the state of time, it's not so much the question of counting every pothole and measuring it. What I'll do is I'll take a percentage of the capital budget and assign that to patching. That will probably be in the order of maybe say 70% of the budget, and then whatever else we have left, I'll work on the capital plan. I think if we went around trying to cost up every pothole, every road, it's not going to happen today, and it wouldn't happen this month. But as we need to move forward, I think we just need to take a percentage, and I would say maybe 70%.
Okay, so that sounds like a more specific kind of proposal. So the proposal would be to assign 70% of the capital budget to filling potholes, with the remainder used for the capital programme. And would you be happy then, so delegate authority to that to, I would imagine that would be to the ECO, to Malcolm MacLeod, in consultation with yourselves via a ward business meeting?
Yes, that would be correct in my understanding.
Okay.
Just consultation with ourselves, but not via a ward business meeting, because we can't wait for that.
Because we can't wait for that. But in consultation with members, it has to be clear that we will highlight where the areas are that we want dealt with. We know the areas ourselves. We know where the roads are going to be closed shortly. So that I think that's key to the proposal, that members' views are taken in.
Have we not already reported everything though?
I have concerns about that, Fiona, if I could come in. I feel, you know, if we're setting a 70% limit on this and we don't reach some of the potholes that you are passionate about, or Maxine knows that she's getting a hard time about, or we in our area are getting, we need to be clear that we spend the money as effectively as possible, and bearing in mind the runs of potholes we've got. If we're going out to a contractor and asking them to do a stretch of road, if you think about from the Liddell junction round to the Westford junction and trying to cover the potholes in between, if you've got, from a business point of view, a company on site with their men and the appropriate equipment, they could cover quite a lot. You know, if you're saying to them, it's not a piecemeal approach, one in the Invergordon High Street, one in Saltburn, one in the West End of Alness, groups of we're wanting you to work on, and we can get you to use your men effectively, and we're wanting a really good price for doing this. You know, we could make the budget go significantly further than just doing a hit here and there. But what if we get to the 70% spend on the budget, and then we find that some of what we really need done is still not being done? You know, I don't know whether Mark would have some kind of input into that, but that really concerns me, that we'll make that agreement today and then we'll find that the bit that we really care about didn't come into the 70% threshold. And
okay, thanks, Caroline.
I think we need to take into account too, some of these areas in your ward and our ward have massive amounts of traffic going over them, and we need to consider that. You know, I know there are roads that we're talking about spending, the Glenglass Road or whatever, and spending a lot of money on it, but the numbers of cars going over it, if we can do remedial work that's going to keep it going, and, you know, until such time as we can definitely put a significant amount of the capital budget towards it, if it means that we're keeping the roads that are being passed over by far more cars every day in a better condition, because if we don't do something about them now, in a year's time, Ian's going to be sitting there saying to us, we're going to have to do even more work to these roads. And we're going to be, you know, we were in this position a year ago and the year before that, and we have seen any work that they've done, it's just gone like water through a sieve. And I feel really sorry for you, and I wouldn't want your job, but all the tea in China. But we need to take a business-like approach to this. We've got a pot of money, and we need to be sure that we are using it as cost effectively as possible to cover the area we've got. And we can't be wasting any money at all. It's got to be good value for money.
Okay, can I ask Ian? Okay, I have other hands up first, but
sorry,
Mark, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, just two fairly quick observations. Hopefully you can agree with the second one. Just in relation to my role, I don't have a decision-making authority in respect of other services on your behalf in this, or indeed my other committee, which is the Black Island Seaforth one. I do have an advocacy role and also sort of a kind of split role in trying as best as I can to give support to Ian and other staff who are attending these meetings, as well as yourself. Just to answer, I think, Caroline's point, I think, you know, Ian was clear about accepting the principle that members' clear instructions, they have a preference for dealing with potholes first. But what he was trying, I think, to get across was to say going out and costing each individual one would be a massive pain in the backside, I think, to paraphrase him. So what he was proposing to do was to take 70% of the budget initially and allocate it towards that purpose. But I wasn't hearing Ian saying, I'm sure, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not hearing him saying that was a maximum. It was a start-off point to say, we think broadly speaking that's a decent chunk, but if it looks, as we are moving along, that that is going to be insufficient, you know, you've given a clearly expressed view today that you want potholes addressed first, and if that takes more than 70%, then that is the instruction that you're giving him today. And that's not an unreasonable instruction. It's not manifestly or otherwise in terms of public law unlawful. And so, you know, you would be able to give him that instruction. But of course, in doing so, you'd have to reflect on his professional judgment and advice to you about the implications that that might have, you know, for investment in roads. Otherwise, in other words, there's always an opportunity cost for whatever decision you take.
Thank you, Mark. Yep, I think that really does sum up exactly what we're saying. That, yep, 70% as the initial start, but if that doesn't do it, then you'll have to use it all if that's necessary. But what we want done very clearly is the potholes. And to me, that's quite clear. Ian, is that a clear proposal to you?
Yes, I mean, you could say 70% minimum.
Yeah.
Just yeah, absolutely crystal clear. And to come back, Councillor Wilson, I mean, we wouldn't be going to a contractor and saying, fill in that pothole. We would be going to a contractor and it would be going up to tender to say, fill in these potholes on these particular roads. So although I can't give you a cost per pothole today, when we go out to tender, we'll be saying, okay, say Patman Rose, we want you to price for 20 streets. These particular 20 streets, we'll have to take some sort of idea of the potholes on there, and we'll get a price back, and it'll be undertaken on a lump sum basis, and how they undertake the work will be up to them. But we're not going to be sending the contractor to Port Mahomet one day and then to Evington the next. It's going to be geographically based. Each tender will be geographically based. And we'll probably split them up into different tranches of tenders. So there'll probably be about 3 different tenders, and maybe even 4, based on the geography.
Okay, thank you, Ian. To me, that's quite exciting to hear that. That's really a really good outcome from the meeting, is that we're going to get our potholes dealt with. Fiona, are you quite happy with that proposal for the minute?
Yes, that's fine. If Ian feels confident that that's something that the committee is able to decide, as a you have a mechanism for deciding, you know, how you're going to allocate the remainder of the money.
I think we have made that clear to Ian, and Mark also is our support here too. Yeah, and he has indicated he's happy with that too.
I think my take on it is that the instruction is for the devolved budget that sits within the competency of this committee, that they're given the instruction that they wish it to be spent on fixing the potholes first. And the minimum requirement they want to see spent on that is 70%. If it takes 100% of the budget to fix all of the potholes, that's what it takes, and that's what has to be done. If there's any money left over after all the potholes are done, whether it's 10, 20 or 30%, happy days. You can go back to what would now be a very heavily truncated and abridged original capital programme for those programmes to be done. The opportunity cost that members are accepting is that those items that are currently on the capital programme, in which in the professional opinion of officers do need doing, will therefore have to be rescheduled and backshifted, if you like, into future years' programmes, and that will have inevitably impacts on the condition of those particular roads, and does leave them open to, I would suspect, in the same way as buildings, potential future fabric challenges and a reduction in the quality of those. So it's a challenge. If you fix existing potholes, the opportunity cost is you're not investing capital sums in roads, and the danger is they do deteriorate to a state where they then become the next year's programme of potholes to be filled. But I think that reasonably captures what you're saying today, and I think you're accepting of those opportunity costs that Ian's described, and hopefully that I've summarised here, and I think that is a fair and competent decision.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Yep, that's a good description, I think, including the happy days words of our proposal, Fiona. Is there anyone that disagrees with that? Mike, you have a hand up. Is that an old hand?
No, it's just that if Ian's going out to tender, how long will that take? And you know, it's an urgent thing here.
It is urgent.
Also, yeah, and also I think Mark mentioned having a meeting. Could we combine that with a meeting that you have organised with the leader and stuff like that, Fiona? So we'll move forward with it very quickly.
Yeah,
and
meetings.
That'd be better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, just
Ian,
to come back. Yeah, it's like we'd have to comply with the contract standing orders for the council. We don't have a framework tender in place for this, so we would probably be, based on the geography, would probably be looking at either discrete packages of work, such as Scotsburn Road, where you're looking at something like a couple of 100 metres. That would probably go out as one, whereas filling in a square metre of pothole, that would probably go out as I said, maybe 3 or 4 different tenders. You would have to get some sort of handle on the numbers of potholes on the roads, so they'd have to be driven and very quickly sorted out into less than or greater than, say, a metre square, and then we'd have to get a price, a bill of quantity price from contractors, repair potholes, cost per pothole, less than 1 square metre, greater than 1 square metre. And then what we would do is we would count up the patches afterwards. That would give us some sort of handle on the tendering process. It would also comply with the contract standing orders, and you would get best value because it wouldn't be going out to one contractor.
Okay.
Yes.
Now,
how long will that take, Ian? Your estimation?
Yeah, you could be looking at maybe 4 weeks, counting backwards, 4 weeks, or maybe 2 weeks to mobilise the contractor. You'd be looking at about probably a couple of days to open the tenders and appoint. You'd probably be looking at a minimum of 2 weeks to tender, and then probably depending on the scale of the tenders, maybe a week to invite tenders, possibly more. So and then ahead of that, we'd still have to get the actual the streets that are being considered, the roads that are being considered, and have some sort of handle on the number of potholes. So this is
I think it could be the summertime before we see it.
Well, it's not going to happen.
Is there not a mean? Yeah, I know. Is there not a means whereby if we see difficulties that you guys can immediately go out and just repair it? So there's bound to be stuff in our.
I think it's important that we understand that putting everything out to contractors is not the only solution. You know, we're coming out of winter. In another maybe month, winter will be almost over. My DLO will be freer. They can take up the first, if you like, batch of potholes. Yeah. And in that time, the contracts that we put out, they can assist. They can then be awarded, and the contractors will be available. So it's not going to happen initially, but we don't have a process where we can just go along to contractors and give them work greater than £25,000. You know, that's just, we need to have that tendering system.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah.
Wait a minute, Mike, can I ask that we just don't have a conversation back and forward? We do it through the chair. I think, you know, we have to bring this discussion to a close. My understanding was that, yes, we go out to tender, but we also still have our men to be employed. So they would be doing what they can and bringing in contractors to support the men. And I think that's what you've just said there, Ian, as well. And that's the best way forward, I think. We get it done as soon as possible, but we understand contractors have to come in for some of it, and our men can do some of the other work. Is there anyone that disagrees with that? I know we've got other hands up. If there's anyone that disagrees with the proposal, Derek, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, it's really just about ensuring, you know, the quality of the job that takes place. You know, it has to be hot tar and it has to be properly sealed with tar.
Yeah.
not these coal tar things that are back up as soon as they're down.
Okay, yeah, we've made that very clear. And Alistair, do you disagree with the proposal?
Well, yes, I think I do, because the whole situation is, Fiona, with what Ian said there, we're talking months down the line, absolute months down the line. We need action tomorrow on this, and there's no sense saying that our men will be able to do it. Our men won't be able to do the task that lies in front of them. It's quite simple. With all the potholes that we have, and even roads, etc., our men will not be able to deal with that. So, for example, Ian, you're saying it's a 25,000 threshold. Well, employ 3 people under 25,000 and you give them the work. How could you call on Pat Monroe's last week to deal with the snow along with other contractors, that you can't call them and other contractors in this week to deal with a severe crisis we have in our road network?
Yeah, Chair, can I answer that, or do you want to take any more questions? Or
I think if I can just add in to Alistair, we are totally agree with his points, but we do have a framework. We have to work within the guidelines, but Ian is aware of the urgency and will use the men as quickly as possible. So using both systems, he has to use both contractors and the men, and get the men working on it as soon as possible. But Ian, if there is anything else you want to add into that?
Really, just to come back about the scale of the snow events, I think we paid Pat Monroe's in the order of about £3,000. We paid the other contractors in the order of ranging from about 1,500, I believe, up to just over £2,000. All those schemes, all that work is well below the threshold for obtaining quotes. If we had to wait to obtain quotes to clear the snow, it would have melted by now. So there's some schemes where the work is sufficiently low in value that we can go direct to a contractor. But other schemes, when we're talking about in excess of £25,000, we have to tender. I think that's all the points. Okay, thank you, Ian. So, members, we're going to move ahead with this proposal. Is there anyone who is against this proposal, who has an alternative? No? Okay. Ian, you're clear what we're moving ahead with? Yes.
Great, okay.
Can I just ask, is St Duth's place to be kept in the programme or taken out of the programme? Should I have any cash left?
I think the other cash would be used on the higher items in the programme, I would suggest.
Yeah.
There's bigger priorities than St Duth's, yeah.
I'm happy to second your proposal, Fiona.
Thank you, Maxine. Okay, so that's great. Thank you. That brings us to the end of probably the most important item that we felt we had to deal with as an area committee. I can move back to item number 4 in the agenda, the school estate improvements update, because Robert Campbell's now able to join us. Hi, Robert. Thank you for coming along. Really what we're looking for both wards is an update on the situation regarding our schools. So I'll just hand over to you just now.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, sorry, there's no report for this. I've got a spreadsheet that I can pop up on the screen. I was on leave when the request to attend came through, so nominated in my absence. Here I am. So I'll put that list up, as I say. Just as a bit of background to that, though, obviously the council approved a report at the start of January for the revised or reprofiled capital programme. So there've been a series of reports since June, really, bringing various projects back for. They'd already been approved, but to give them a further sign off. So the January report kind of pulled all that together, and it gives us a much better baseline going forward. Obviously, there's an expenditure profile in there for the Tane campus as well now, so I think that offers a bit more clarity and a bit more reassurance, perhaps, to community and stakeholders. So that's good. There's quite a lot going on at the moment, obviously, with the early learning and childcare programme as well. So I think in order to improve communication going forward, we'll probably put regular updates out to the ward members, just advising if our contracts being awarded here at the start and finish dates for individual projects. Try and keep you better informed going forward, which I think is something that's maybe been lacking with everything that's been going on in the last few months or so. I've also got Susanna Holmes on the call as well. She's been dealing with Allness Academy from the start, and she's now working on Tain. So any difficult questions, she's here to support me. I'll just pop I'll share my screen and put that spreadsheet up. Hopefully you can see that. So what I've done, I've listed them by secondary school, ESG school grouping. What I can maybe do is just go through each of them and then take questions at the end of each of the three sections. So starting off with Allness Academy, obviously the new school building was handed over eventually in October, a bit later than planned, obviously due to suspension of work, but I think that's been quite successful. And phase 2 is progressing at the moment, demolition of the school and external works. It was originally programmed to be complete in October 2021. It slipped slightly, I think. Contractors claiming there was a bit of a delay, I think mainly on asbestos. So it may slip into November, but nothing too significant at this stage. We're still haven't agreed that extension of time with them. But I think the feedback generally from all this has been pretty good. So good to get that building handed over, long overdue, and get the old one knocked down. The next three are the early learning and childcare expansion in Allness, the three primary schools. Obstdale was the one that is most under pressure and most in need of that additional accommodation, so we prioritised that one. The building's just recently been handed over. There's still some external works to complete during Easter holidays, but I think the school are planning to move into that and get it up and running for the final term after the Easter holidays. And Bridge End and Cool Hill, similar projects there. As I said, not quite as high a priority as Oakdale, so they should be on site in May, running through to July and ready for occupation and operation at the start of the new school session in August. And finally, in the Allness area, Kilturn, that's a project that it was previously approved, and obviously it's been reaffirmed in the report that went to council in January, so we need to get moving with that one now. We're arranging for a the next couple of weeks just to agree the scope of the project, what we need to do. Obviously it's work on our live school site as well, and we've got the updated school road forecast that we just published earlier this week, I think. So we just need to thrash out the scope for that. Again, we'll update the ward members as soon as we do that. So maybe stop there. So happy to take any questions on the project just now.
Do members have any questions from the first ward? No.
No. Okay.
Okay.
Start. I'll share my screen again. For Invergordon, two projects there. Invergordon Academy. We had some funding that was approved previously for cladding works at the school, but I think the lessons that we've sort of learned from Park being co-located on the academy campus and some of the COVID issues, in discussion with the head teacher, we agreed that refurbishment and increasing the number of toilets is probably a higher priority. So that funding was included in the report in January. We're still agreeing with the head teacher the scope of that and the timing. Again, it's going to be quite tricky. We've got 7 weeks in the summer holidays, but that wouldn't be enough to do everything, so there will have to be some work during term time. So again, hopefully we'll thrash out that in the next week or so, and again let the ward members know once we've got a clear plan for that project. And then on Park Primary, Derek Martin, who sends his apologies for today, but he'd written to the ward members, and also that's been passed on, I think, to the parent council now, that the original plan was to have the Park school up and running on the old Park site after the Easter holidays, but due to a number of factors, we've had to review that. So we're certainly going to get the nursery up and running after the Easter holidays. In discussion with the head teacher, I think that's the main priority. I think they can cope at the academy, but the nursery's under a lot of pressure. Obviously, it's sharing the accommodation at South Lodge at the moment. So that's on course. It's unfortunate that obviously the return has been, of the full school has been delayed until August, but we're still working on it anyway and taking it forward. And again, the good news is that the funding's secured and it's the revised capital programme. So I'd say quite happy to take questions on the Park one just now if there are any. No?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, yes, Maxine.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't know if I'd put my hand up or not. No, I didn't, sorry. obviously Derek shared the information with parent council and parents, and you know, they do have questions that I think you're going to answer at the end of this week, Robert. Yes. Obviously the sooner the better, but so they're obviously concerned about August, and they're talking about the planning application not being put in time. Now I've not seen that come before my planning committee, but it'll probably be delegated approval anyway. I just wanted you to point out to them, and maybe me to point out to you, that you know, planning applications can be in retrospect, and while I'm not suggesting that we go ahead without planning consent, I'm sure that could be expedited. So I don't think that that's going to be a major problem, or has been. Maybe you could confirm that.
That's correct. I mean, the planning application was drafted and submitted to planning. They came back with a few queries on the dining, the catering unit. So not fundamental, but because of that, it's not been validated and uploaded. So again, working back from the August deadline now, there's plenty of time there to get everything in place. There's been regular dialogue with Julie Ferguson in planning as well. So yeah, I'll spell that out. I've got a response to go to Mark Lancaster, the chair of the parent council. We'll certainly clarify that. He had a few other points that he wanted addressed as well. So we'll get that by the end of the week.
Okay, thanks, Robert. There's
okay.
some other questions. Yep.
Great, thank you. And finally, on to Tyne. So myself and Susanna, I think we're down to attend the ward business meeting on Monday to give you a more detailed update on that, and take the ward members through where we are with it. We've also to arrange a meeting of the stakeholder group and set a date for that and give them a full update. But Susanna's been involved in that. I think she had calls this morning actually with the project team. So it's moving on at a pace now. As I say, it's good news that the funding required for it is now in the capital programme, and that's been confirmed. So that hopefully will be good news as well for the community. And just some other works at Tyne Academy. We had to carry out some accessibility improvements. They've now been completed. Even though we're going to be moving out that building a few years' time, these works really are probably long overdue, so had to be carried out. We did scale them back slightly. I think if we were going to be staying there, we'd probably have had to put in a permanent lift. So it's mainly been stair lifts and other improvements that we made to the campus. So hopefully that helps the current situation until the new building's ready. So again, happy to take any questions on Tyne.
Yep, I've got I'm glad you're coming on Monday to give us a breakdown, because I think we really do need to know where we are with the campus. We haven't been told anything for quite a long of time. Although there has been emails going about setting up a stakeholder meeting, which is good. But again, that's led to confusion, because I've had parent councils come to me saying that there was a stakeholder meeting and why weren't they invited. But I think that was to do with head teachers. So I went back to them saying, I don't really know. We weren't invited either, but I'm guessing it's head teachers. It just didn't look very good that we had to go back and say, I'm sorry, we really don't know. But so there's a wee bit of miscommunication going about, and it doesn't reflect very well on us because we don't know anything. And that's what we've had to say to the community. I'm sorry, we don't know anything, which is not ideal. No,
that's unfortunate. I mean, I think once we get the stakeholder group reconvened and get some regular dates in the calendar, we can keep them updated. I think Susanna has been obviously having engagement sessions with head teachers, some of the heads of department as well in the past few weeks and months. I guess that's where the confusion maybe arisen. Yeah, I think I guessed it came out of there because one of the head teachers happened to share with me that she'd been invited to a meeting, so that meant I could go back to the parent councils and say, I think this is probably the case, although I'm not too sure, but that would be my guess. But I'd rather we were a bit more informed so that we could, then go back to our communities and stop any of this miscommunication that goes about. And then the second point was we're looking at 24 for our campus to be operational. How secure are you around that? And I noticed that our other schools are not listed. So are we assured that there's nothing else needs done? As we know, Craighill School primary is falling down, and work has been done on the toilets. Will it all hold up until the end? Is there anything else that needs done? I'm just concerned there's nothing else there on the list to be done. Yeah, nothing planned at the moment. We obviously have the condition surveys, and we've got a number of schools similar to the Tyne ones that are due for replacement, but we can't ignore them. Obviously, a lot of them are being replaced for a good reason. They're in poor condition, so We have to keep on top of things like roof leaks, windows, electrics, all the other fabric improvements that maybe are required. But any works that we do, they're kind of planned for that. At least we've got a window. So if you do some roof work, we're not going to put a brand new metal pitch roof in it. We might just put a flat roof on. It's got a limited life, but it'll see us through until the new school is ready. So that's a regular sort of ongoing thing. We'll probably update that annually and just check that nothing's deteriorated significantly in that timescale. With regard to August 24, it is a very challenging timescale, but we've got a programme that's set out at the moment for that. It is driven by the Scottish Government and the phase 1 of the Learning Estate Investment Programme. But no, I think we do have a programme that we're working to. It's been quite tricky and challenging in the last few months as well with COVID, and some consultants maybe been furloughed or not available or not able to do site surveys. But things are moving on now. I say hopefully we'll be able to give you a full update on Monday and then take that to the stakeholders thereafter.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other hands up to ask you any other questions, so that's been quite straightforward. Thank you, Robert. I do appreciate you giving that update.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Bye now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members, so we'll move now to item number 6 on the agenda, which is the Housing Revenue Account Capital Programme on pages 49 to 53. And we've got Jonathan Henderson here. Jonathan, we'll all have read the report and you have attended ward business meetings for both wards. So if there's anything else you would like to draw out, and other than that, we'll just take any questions.
No, that's fine, thanks, Chair. Yeah, the report's in front of you, and I'd welcome any comments or questions. Okay, members, we've got 1, 2, 3, 5 recommendations there, all for noting. Maxine.
Yeah, just wanted to say thanks to Jonathan. It was good that he came around our business meeting. We got everything off our chest. We're going to concentrate on the potholes and the housing estates that we finally getting on top of, hopefully. So yeah, well done. Thanks for that.
Yeah, I certainly echo what Maxine says. We do appreciate, Jonathan, the communication. You're really good at communication and keeping members up to date with everything that's going on and explaining your thoughts as you go along, so you take us with you. So we really appreciate that. Okay, so members, so we agree the 5 recommendations on the report. Mike, you would like to come in?
Yes, very briefly, just clarification, Jonathan. I remember at the Ward Business meeting we talked about other areas that we may be interested in getting the potholes filled in, apart from the ones we discussed. I want to find out, how do we notify you with that? Or I think the thing was you were going to go around, weren't you, at the various sites? Am I right in saying that?
I think, Councillor Finlayson, it's going to work best as just a collaborative approach to it. So following on from our discussions last week, and similarly following a kind of email chains flying about in respect of the Tain ward as well, I've spoken to Colin Sharp and the repairs team and really just asked him to set about putting together a plan quickly. So I've already seen emails this week which begin to set out some of the key areas. And I think what we'd said we would do is, once we establish what those areas are, is we would attend ward business or the next available ward business, and or even through email, just get the I suppose the order of priority approved that way. But certainly any time that you want to highlight a particular concern or area, just come directly to me.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Okay, members, we agree the recommendations in the report. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 7, which is the Housing Performance Report on pages 54 to 57. And we have the Housing Manager, Jim Holden, here to answer any questions that you have. Hello, Jim.
Good morning, members. Good morning, Chair. Thank you. Well, you have the report in front of you, members, and I know you've had quite a long morning already, so I'm not going to belabor any points, but I'm very happy to pick up any questions that you might have on the report that's in front of you.
No, I don't think there seems to be any questions. It was a good report. I certainly didn't have anything. No, Oh, Maxine, yes.
Yeah, I'm just looking at page 55, Jim. So why did it take us longer in our ward, in the Cromarty Firth ward, to complete the non-emergency repairs compared to the Tain and Easter Ross ward?
That's a very good point, Councillor Smith. I would need to speak to Colin Sharp and just have a chat with him about that. I'll come back to you on that if that's okay. It does seem, yes, it's about half the time, isn't it? It's not quite.
It's quite a long time, you know. It's quite a lot past the benchmark, 6.6 days. You know, quarter two, 14.2 days, quarter three, 12.8 days. Seems a bit strange. Yeah, if you could get back to us, that'd be good.
I'm very happy to do that. Thank you.
Okay, there's no other questions, Jim. So if you could get back to the Cromarty Firth members with that, that would be great. Thank you.
Happy to do that. Yes, Chair.
Okay, so we'll move on to item number 8, which is item number 7, the housing because there's 3 housing in a row. Housing revenue account, the garage rents, pages 58 to 61. And Jim, you're staying on to answer any questions on that.
I am indeed, Chair. Thank you. Members, it's hardly the most pressing financial decision for you to make, but it is one that does need to be made. It's a decision delegated to you at the local level in terms of garage rents. I'm sure you'll all be aware of the decision a couple of weeks back to increase council house rents by 2%, and the paper in front of you recommends a similar rent increase for garages. There's a slight differential between what tenants pay and what non-tenants pay. In other words, tenants, council house tenants who have a garage, and people who aren't council house tenants who have a garage, largely to do with the charge of VAT. But you'll see from the table under paragraph 6.2 that the recommended increase is 19 pence a week for council tenants of garages and 23 pence a week for non-tenants who have a garage. So, as I say, not the largest increase, and the overall impact of that would be potentially an increase rental income of about £3,700. So it's not a very significant amount of money, but it's a decision that you need to make. So our recommendation is that you follow what we have in the paper, but I'm very happy to take any questions, any concerns you might have about that.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Can I point out in item 5.5 and on the appendix 1, it's Lochaber that's noted. So if you look at item number 5.5.
Yes, Chair.
The table below shows the current rents for tenants and non-tenants for garages and garage sites in Lochaber.
I beg your pardon. That's.
And then if you look at appendix 1, page 61, it says garage site options Lochaber.
Well, I will speak very severely to my colleague Rory, who actually prepared the paper, but I will equally take blame because I was the one who presenting it this morning. I didn't pick that up, so I'm sorry about that, Chair. I think the table at 6.2 is accurate.
Okay.
Despite that, but my apologies. It's one of these cut and paste ones that's obviously slipped through, so I'm very sorry about that.
So the figures and everything was, if we take a decision, we're still taking it on the information that's there.
I appreciate that, Chair. I can confirm that the figures in 6.2 are the correct figures for you to take a decision on.
Thank you, Jim. Maxine, you've got a question?
Yeah, thanks, Fiona and Jim. Yeah, page 59. Right, I'm trying to get my head around this, Jim. Am I right in thinking that what you're saying is at 5.3 we have 148 garages void, that accounts to £75,000 of an annual budget loss, or am I getting that wrong? If I'm getting it right, and we've only got a repairs budget of 21,700, as it says in 5.7, how do we ever get those garages fixed and repaired and rented out? Because, as a business person, not only am I seeing an opportunity there, but I'm seeing a total deficit, which shouldn't be allowed. We should be making that money on those voids, and we need to find a way to do it. So if you could clarify if I'm right in my thinking, and how can we change that?
Thank you, Councillor Smith. As always, straight to the point as a business person, and I'm grateful for you raising that. You're absolutely right. If we are not gathering in the full income that we could on these garages, and we're not spending very much money repairing them, then logically we're always going to be in a black hole. We're never going to get to the point where we've got well, which people want to rent from us to generate the rental income to keep them in good repair. So it's a vicious circle. Clearly, it's, and we've mentioned this at previous discussions of this over previous years, the level of investment historically in our garages has been far too low, resulted in these voids and in garages in poor condition. So, looking at an overall repairs budget for Ross and Cromarty as a whole, not just your wards, of 21,000. Well, if it costs £1,000 or £1,300 to repair one garage door, we're not going to be doing very many repairs to garages with 21,000 over the whole of Ross and Cromarty. So, I think my concern is that we really need to look at this in a different kind of way. And we've talked before about what the council strategy should be in relation to housing garages, and I know Mark Rogers, who's with us, has got some fairly strong views on that in relation to the overall asset management strategy. So I think he and I have similar views that we need to sweat the asset that is council houses, council garages. And although it's not in your ward, I could just give you a bit of an update that in pursuit of that sort of sweat the asset principle, I was having conversations with colleagues yesterday in Dingwall, and we're proposing to take part of a row of garages and do some work on them, bring them up to standard, find out how much that costs, and also eventually to use those as formal storage units, because we recognise that most of our garages at the moment are not actually used for putting cars in, they're used for storing stuff in. And if you want to rent similar size storage in Alness or anywhere else, you're looking at, well, considerably more than 10 or 12 quid a week. So the idea is that we'll spend a bit of money, bring these row of garages in Dingwall up to that standard, see if there is a market to rent them out as storage units. And I think that will then give us a steer about whether that's something that can be replicated elsewhere. I know from talking to members in Caithness that they have views that they'd like to see some garages demolished and parking created, and I think we've had that conversation as well, Councillor Smith. There are some issues around that in terms of you lose an HRA asset and it just becomes a parking area with no income generation. So I think getting the options right and having something to present to you as a result of a firm pilot in Dingwall that can say, yes, this is how much we spent, this is the income that we can generate from that, and this is one of the options that we'd like to try in various other places in your area, will be a position I'd like to be in. You probably are aware that my tenure of this post is time limited now, so my colleague Rory, who will be taking this on in the future, but I'm hoping to give it a good push before I disappear, and hopefully we'll be able to come back to you later this year with some firmer proposals about that. But at the moment the recommendation is pretty much the status quo. Let's keep the garages running, unless of course you as members would like to increase the amount of repairs money that's available for looking after the garage stock as we currently have it, because that's within your gift. If you wish to change the priorities of investment, that can be done, but it's really your call.
Thank you. Can I just come back for 2 seconds, Fiona? First of all, no, I didn't know you were leaving, Jim. Take it you're retiring, but you don't look retirement age. So we'll be sorry to see you go, and maybe we should meet Rory more. Maybe we do want to consider that, Fiona. Maybe we could bring some options back to next area committee on how and what would happen, what it would look like if we put an outline business case together about increasing the budget. Thank you.
Okay, we'll bring in Mark here.
Thanks, Chair. Jim made a number of really good points. I just want to pick up on some of them and then maybe talk about the strategic sort of approach that I think we need to take as an organisation, and perhaps some of the impacts that might have for area committees in terms of how be engaged with that process, because it can be quite complicated. So, I mean, the point was made, you know, if you knock down garages and you just drop a pile of parking there, you're not collecting the rent for those parking spaces. Well, not necessarily. Yeah, I mean, that could be the case. You could elect to have parking permits instead for the spaces that you created, but it's just coincidentally might happen to be a reasonable passing rate to generate some income. So it doesn't necessarily follow that they have to be without any form of income generation, but that obviously is a matter for members to think about and agree on. But even if you knock down a pile of garages, for example, and you create parking spaces which have no income necessarily charged against them, the real benefit is you don't have the 30-year costs of maintaining the garages, because you've blown them up and they're not there anymore. So actually, when we talk about asset management in this widest sense, and think about this also applies to non-council housing and not garages, often what people are talking about when talking about rationalising buildings is, can we sell an asset and get a capital receipt in? And that's good in one sense, like, because if you've got a high value asset and you sell it, you get a nice pile of cash in the bank. But actually, in many cases, when you're doing these things at scale, it's the costs that you do not have to spend. It's the avoidable costs over the next 30 years. It's where you make your real winnings. So I know it can sound counterintuitive on the one hand to say, blow up a pile of garages and leave the ground as made up for parking and you don't have an income coming in, but it can still make sense when you look at a 30-year business plan and you look over that resource period. It can still make absolute economic sense to do precisely that. So I'd ask you just to hold that thought in there, because I know it can sound a little bit odd, but there are plenty of examples where that's been the case. I think in the wider point Maxine makes, I had a couple of sort of observations. You know, if something doesn't wipe its face, why would you do it? Number one, fundamental rule of business, I would suggest here. And I've spent half my life in housing associations as well as councils, so I've not always worked in local government. I've also worked in the voluntary sector. I know Maxine has an interest in the local housing association, so you'll appreciate what I'm on about there. As a general point, any asset, whether it's a house, a garage, a non-housing asset, if it's going to cost you more to manage and maintain than it brings in rent over a period, then not only why would you do it, but it's actually an active drag on the housing revenue account. Now, philosophically, and I'll try not to sound overtly political about this, but I do have quite a strong view on it. Philosophically, the housing revenue account is made up of tenant rent money, and many of our tenants don't have a lot of money to start with. And so the whole concept of best value or maximising that bang for buck that you get for spending tenants' rent money has always been front and centre of what I've been trying to achieve for as long as I've worked in housing. And so if I'm looking across the whole of the housing assets, whether it's garages or houses, if we are doing something that does not make economic sense, what we're doing is wasting tenants' rent money and haven't got much money to start with. So for me, that's a fundamental no. And one of the things I'm hoping to address over the coming time I have here, because a lot of this has been spent so far today in what on earth are we going to do with our non-housing stock buildings and the health and safety issues in relation to that, and so on and so forth. I haven't had as much time, particularly because of COVID coming on top, to be able to look at housing across the piece in a strategic sense. But some of you may be aware through the work that's done in the Housing and Property Committee, and if not, I'd say to you, you might find actually the approach that we set out for corporate landlord and asset management there. There's a report on the 10th of December that I authored, which you might find interesting in terms of the detail about how we calculate these things and what methodologies we use. Prior to coming here, I was in the West Midlands, Dudley Council, just in between Birmingham and Wolverhampton, for those of you that have a rough grasp of that geography. And they had 22,000 units of stock. And actually one of the big challenges was some of the things that Jim was talking about, underinvestment in prior years, challenges about stock being a variety of different construction types and methodologies, 60, 70 years old on average for large chunks of it. And what do you do about that? And some of these challenges are that you need to look across all of the assets and the value of your stock. Does it support if your stock is properly invested? Do you have an asset base at which you can borrow more money against in order to be able to invest in it? It's a bit challenging because about 40% of our revenue budget actually goes on maintaining historical debt, which is high, but does mean that there is some headroom still left if we are properly investing in our stock and growing that asset base. So that's one aspect of it. But when we look at that example, and I did exactly this process when I was in Dudley, it does throw up some interesting challenges. Some stock we have to accept, just as we were talking about in relation to garages, is past its economic life, and simply throwing good money after bad is not a sensible use of tenant rent money. And so in some circumstances, we are disinvesting in some stock and in some buildings to maximise the investment in our retained stock and to actually improve the stock quality by then investing that money that isn't being wasted on stock that has no value into new high quality housing. So there are a range of different ways in which we can do this. Now, that becomes complicated to a certain extent when you're talking about not only the geography of the Highlands, but 10 area committees and also the whole strategic approach. And this is where it's going to be quite interesting going forward, because on the one hand, I mean, I say it's relatively easy. It's a process that takes a while to get through, usually a couple of years to do all that assessment of worth and all the rest of it. But it's easy for us to come up with a list of, say, 1 to 14,000 of all the council's homes and go, well, this is the one that needs the most investment all the way down the list, and we wouldn't bother with those ones to get rid of them. And that works from a technical perspective, if you like. It works in my head as someone whose technical background is HRA housing. But then you have to reflect on the local aspect of that, and in particular, devolved budgets and devolved decision-making authority that sits with this area committee. And so my original plan for 1 to 14,000 is completely revised depending on what resource envelope I have, what the views of the area committees are, and in particular, what the views of our tenants are. Because, you know, if we are about anything, we should be about supporting delivering high quality services, whether that's physical housing or a range of support services, to tenants, because they're our boss in many respects. And I mean that both in terms of councillors and in terms of officers here. They're the ones that are in our homes, and we should be listening to what they are doing and responding to it. So there are those sort of 3 or 4 levels of complexity. There's what works strategically, that's actually what money I've really got in reality, which acts as a brake on that and means I have to reprofile things. There's absolutely what committees want to do, but at the centre of all of that, we should be focused on making sure we're delivering excellent quality services to tenants in the first place, and that's what I'm trying to get to. So I hope that hasn't, I suppose I've stolen the opportunity to just give you an idea about what asset management means in its biggest sense, and it's come from a discussion on garages. So I'm sorry to completely knacker the agenda in that way, but that's the kind of sort of things that we're thinking about. So in some respects, to end on that point, Jim is saying, well, do you know what, maybe we should think about jacking up the rents, frankly, because most people use them for storage because they were built many, many years ago, and the average size of a car was an old style Mini, never mind a new one. You can't get a car in a garage and open the doors in most cases these days with modern cars. So if they're using them for storage, as someone who moved up to the Highlands in the West Midlands almost exactly a year ago as it happens, I was getting charged 25 quid a week by Whites for a space probably about the same size as our garage. And certainly if you go to Safe Store, any of the other big sort of places that will do your storage for you, they'll charge you several times a month what we charge. And one of the options that's open to members is to think about whether or not we want to recognise the fact that many garages are used for commercial purposes or storage purposes essentially, and significantly increase the rent so that there's money available to you to invest in those. That's one option. I might take the other option. Jim's alluded to it. I'd rather blow them up and put housing on there. In most area committees, we've got significant challenges about people's ability to access good quality affordable housing, and actually the land that we've got in many is land that we've already got existing assets on that perhaps aren't working so well, such as garages. So we'll have a further conversation about this in the future, and I'm happy to come to a meeting and talk about asset management in its widest sense, because that's just a wee taster of it, and it can be quite complex. But you can see just from a discussion about what do we do with garages, actually there are a lot of different options, and all of them have impacts. I think I'll stop there before I get a red card for going on too long. Thank you, Chair.
No, thank you, Mike. That was really interesting, and I'm glad you did bring that up, because we do have to think much wider than just, do we put rents up? What do we, we have to think strategically, and we need all this information. And I have read your report to the Housing and Property Committee, and it is important that we're all working with you and aware of your thoughts and the direction, and that we give plenty thought to the different ways we can go. So I would welcome if you could maybe come to a joint ward business meeting and talk to us in more detail about it.
Yeah, happy to do that.
That would be great. We'll get Helen to set that up.
Yeah, that would be great.
Thank you. Mike, and then Polly.
Yeah, Jim, just a question. One of the things I've been beating a drum about for some time now is the potential to use disused or unused garages for a very, very small enterprise, somebody's doing dog trimming or whatever else, that sort of small enterprise. There's a great lack of area or places where people can actually go and set up a business of that size. As a result, a lot of them, of course, are working from home, which is fine, but a number of them would like to have a small place to go to. We have a sort of not a precedent, but a housing development in Evanton, between Evanton and Allness, and part of the whole structure of that development was to set up small business units for folk to use on that estate. So that's one thought which I haven't had an answer to at all over the past 6 months, maybe a year. And it's something I don't know if, even if you said no, we're not going to do it, that's fine. But I keep getting people asking me about it, so I need to just get clarification on that. And the other thing is that we've sort of set a precedent in housing matters these days by charging a higher rent for people if they want better heating systems or whatever else. Could we consider going out to the community and saying, look, if we do up this garage to a certain standard, we will charge you a certain amount of rent, and it'll be higher than the normal rent. But I think a number of folk may like that. But I think Mark's point is very well taken on that respect, and that the size of the garages are just too small these days. You'd have to knock 2 of them into one, probably. But that's my asking that point. Thank you.
Okay, and I'll take Pauline as well before we move to Nancy.
Thanks, Fiona. Yeah, Mark, I love your ideas. I have to be honest with you. For me, the problem we have with the garages is where they are. A lot of them are right smack bang in the middle of schemes where they can't afford a lot of rent anyway. They're being vandalised permanently. I mean, it's just poor Jim. I mean, it's an endless task to try and keep this up. They're not fit for very much, certainly in our schemes. I can't talk for anywhere else, but certainly in the schemes that we have round about our area, a lot of them are really poor. I mean, it's nobody's fault. They're old. They're falling to pieces. So the kids, of course, use that as an excuse to jump in and vandalise them, which I understand. But to me, I'm a bit like Mark. We're not making any money. We're losing money permanently off them. So to knock them down and make it use the money that we would have normally been putting into upkeeping them and to trying to hang on to this asset, it doesn't make much sense. I think people nowadays would far prefer that the money that we save from that went into the problems like the fixing of the houses, and the updating of the houses. But, I mean, I'm sure Fiona very kindly asked for a meeting, so I think that's maybe somewhere we should probably discuss that rather than here. But yeah, I like what everybody's had to say. Thanks, Mark.
Mm-hmm. Mark, will I go back to you? You've got your hand up.
Just a couple of quick points. I'm sure Jim will have a few things to add on to this as well. I think one of the things you need to be careful about, and I've seen this in other organisations I've worked in the past, is if you start to differentiate rents for what is essentially the same basic type of property based around different assets within it, i.e. what type of heating system has it got, has it had a kitchen and a bathroom upgrade, etc., etc. What you then start to find is you get challenges, particularly when you think about the geography of the Highlands, about equal accessibility to certain types of housing across the piece. So in other words, if we've been through an estate in Inverness, for example, and fired on a whole load of new heating systems and we're charging a higher rent there, what does that mean for that sort of typical 3-bed house when actually elsewhere 3-bed rents are lower? We need to avoid having a disparity, in other words, of rent charges for what is on the face of it ostensibly the same type of accommodation in different locations, within reason, accepting the rights that you have to influence that. Because it is about a wider accessibility to housing problem across all of our communities, across the whole of the Highlands. So it's something that we need to address. And actually, in many cases, one of the reasons why you end up getting into that situation where you're thinking about having to charge differential rents is simply because prior years' investment or disinvestment decisions have come back to bite you and you haven't quite got enough money to be able to do it in the way that you want to do it. So one way of doing that is to recover it through rents or service charges, and having that differential. It's a difficult challenge to break the back of, but the answer in the longer term is actually to try, and through that asset management process I described earlier, get the fundamentals correct, know what you need to know about your stock, about what condition it is, what the investment need is, and plan that over the 30-year period, and then you can get better alignment of rents so there's less differential as well, which is better from an inequalities point of view. So again, it's quite a complicated kind of situation. Hopefully the simpler answer is to Michael's other point about, can people use garages to cut dogs' toenails, I suppose, to summarise it. And I think, Jim and I and others will take that away. I would imagine Malcolm, as a planning colleague, might have a view about change of use. I suppose that's one aspect of it. But you would like to think as a council, where we've got an asset that someone could in theory use at low price in order to sort of help start up businesses or to sustain employment, we would want to be at least taking an open mind on that. And I think maybe it's one for Jim before he retires. And by the way, thank you very much for all your service to the council. It's been hugely appreciated, and I know we've had a few conversations and I've valued them as well. So congratulations, and enjoy your time when you do depart from us. But I think we'll take that away in the meantime and have a chat about, well, actually, it's likely to be only a small number in very limited circumstances. It sounds like, in principle, probably the right thing to want to be trying to enable as far as it's practical to do so. But as ever, there's lots of different arms to the council with interest in this. We definitely have to have a chat with our colleagues in planning and possibly building control. But in principle, Mike, we're happy to take it away. And Jim can come back to you with a couple of lines in due course about yes, no, whatever. So at least you get a decision, because I get what you're saying. Not one way or the other is bad. I don't mind if it's yes or no, just tell me. So that's fair enough. We'll take that away.
Okay, thank you, Mark. I have to say that I very much agree with you in terms of equality. I would be really uncomfortable with a tiered system of you pay more rent, you get a better house. That's not what council housing is about at all, and I'd be very much against that. I think we have to look at having a standard for all our housing, and that should be available to everyone to have. I'll move on to Jim just now to come back and answer the questions that have been posed.
Thank you very much, Councillor Robson. Thank you, Mark. A couple of points, members. We've been, over the last 10 years plus, rationalising rents to try and harmonise them from the days when rents were set by local authorities, and I think we're down to about the last 15 tenants in the council who are still on that differential process. So I think next year they're all on the same rent level. Councillor Finison's right, we do charge higher rents for new build, and that's to reflect, it's the new build premium, which reflects some of the additional borrowing costs of that. In terms of Councillor Finison, the idea of garages as sort of starter units for little businesses, yeah, fine in principle, as Mark says. A couple of practical issues: we don't have power to them, we don't have drainage or water, so there will be investment required to achieve that. But I think one of the conversations I've been having with your colleagues in Caithness has been this sort of idea of treating garages sort of holistically across an area. So a strategy which would look at changing them into storage units for higher rentals, that would see some of them demolished to create parking, that would see some of them converted into new build sites, that might see some of them into small units. I think all of this needs to be part of an overall strategy which looks to sweat the asset in the best way that benefits tenants and the wider community. So I think as a task for us, Mark and myself and my colleagues, happy to take that away. It's something the council looked at in 2012. We had an asset list of every single garage and garage site. That was all done, but it went nowhere because we didn't have the resources. I think it's now way up your agenda locally and elsewhere. So I think that's a good signal for us to basically get on with it. Councillor Moreau, you mentioned that the schemes are the garages are offering in sort of areas where they're not well looked after, and I think while we could easily just go say, right, okay, well, we'll deal with that, we'll get those flattened, I do think it's much better to consider it in terms of the wider strategy that I've just talked about. It means we make the proper investment decisions and effectively a business case, and we would probably, as Mark has pointed out, need to speak to local tenants with a couple of options on in front of us, a bit of local consultation to say, look, we think we'd like to do this. This is the reasons for doing it. What do you think? And get their views on it. So an informed decision is made at some point. But I think task ahead of us is clear, and we're happy to take that away, and we'll come back to you as soon as we can with that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jim. Maxine, would you like to come back?
Yeah, just in terms of helping you run this up. So you're looking for a proposal of whether you want a 1% or 2% increase. I would propose a 2% increase. That's, just in line with inflation really, and what we're putting our rents up by. But yeah, I'd like to see a business case coming before us as soon as possible. And in that business case, can we look at what the rentals of storage units would be compared to what we're charging for our garages, because 90% of them are used for that. And then we can proceed with a consultation with our tenants and look forward to putting some proposals forward at a future business case. And that at a future area committee meeting, and that might mean that tenants have to accept that the rents may go up, not in line with their rental for the houses, but maybe higher. But we can look at that when it comes to us. Thank you.
Yeah, Maxine, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's different situations in different wards, and even within a ward, different housing estates call for a different option to be taken. So I think we have to look at our own individual areas. You have to invite the comments of members and their views, but also the overall strategic planning of what to do about it has to be in place too. So we have a proposal for a 2% increase, which is what I was going to propose from the committee. We'll take Maxine as a proposer, and I'll second that then. Does anyone have any? No. Okay.
Thank you, members.
Thank you. Jim, is this your last meeting, or maybe another area committee?
Well, Chair, I mean, 30th of June is my official leaving date, but we haven't, I'm not quite sure. You've got another meeting in May, but yeah. Our intention, Mark, I don't want to trigger another long disquisition from Mark, no offence, but we are as a service in the middle of a restructuring, which would see, amongst other things, extra responsibility delegated to the principal housing officers to come to these meetings and take more of a lead. So if anything, I will be there only as a back seat with one of my colleagues taking the front seat and answering the questions. But I think realistically, I'm wanting to let my colleagues take the glory from here on in. So just maybe it is the time just to say thank you for being a pleasure working with you. Hopefully there'll be a chance to have something slightly more formal, but thanks for your time today and thanks for your decision. It's very helpful. Yeah, thank you, Jim. On behalf of the area committee and my ward as well, I want to thank you for all the work that you've done. You're one of the officers I continually go to because I know that you will always respond very quickly and very helpfully. And the way that you communicate with our communities is fabulous. You've come out to public meetings. You've been so caring and attentive to the needs of our community. It's been fabulous, and I'd be lost without you because you are the person I turn to when I have housing problems, and I'm so thankful for that, for the care that you've given to the communities and team in Easter Ross, and for all the support that you've given me in my role as a councillor in all housing matters. Much appreciated, Chair. Thank you very much. I mean, there are very good people in the team who will follow on and do as good a job, if not better than me. I sincerely hope they do a better job than me in some areas. So, let's give them the chance to do that, to shine, and I'll retreat gracefully into the background. Thank you for your time today. Thank you very much. I think there'll be big shoes to fill. Thanks, Jim. Thank you. Okay, members, we'll move on to item number 9, which is the use of the Cromarty Firth COVID response funds on pages 62 to 64. And there's 2 recommendations here. The first one, to consider the proposal to allocate 15,000 from the remaining Cromarty Firth COVID ward discretionary fund to support the provision of play equipment in the Cromarty Firth ward in consultation with the amenities staff and local communities. And number 2, to note that the next steps to progress this work will include confirmation of any match funding available, the type of equipment to be installed, and consideration of ongoing maintenance. And again, that involves the amenities team and the communities. Maxine, would you like to comment on this?
Yeah, I guess nobody's going to give a report on it because it's not really needed. It's been to full council, so you all know what this is about. This ward, my own ward, Cromarty Firth ward, we give an extra COVID money because we have areas of social deprivation, and it's right that we need that and use it for the right purposes. Originally, we were using it for food banks and food parcels, but our supermarkets have stepped up to the plate and are providing 90% of the food, thanks to Councillor Monroe. So I'm proposing that when children come out of lockdown, they're going to need something to do. They need to get outside into outdoor spaces. And as we know, our play parks in our council areas have been decimated because the council cut the budget several years ago. So these play parks need to be regenerated, refilled, and so it's my proposal that we use the 15,000 of our COVID money, which still leaves us approximately 9 to 10,000 as a balance. I just want to check that today we are agreeing to use the 15, and that that the next point on your recommendation can be delegated to our own ward, in that we will inform our ward manager and amenities managers of our match funding and what we need to put in each area, because I don't think we have time to bring it back to another area committee. We need to get ordering the stuff. Secondly, I've been in discussions with people in my own area that would like to bring forward a lunch club for the elderly, because although this means we can provide something for the younger people, we do need something for the elderly, and a lunch club in an area of deprivation is really needed in Invergordon. So I'd also like to maybe mention that in the next few weeks, our ward will discuss whether to spend another maybe couple of thousand of the COVID money towards the lunch club. So I wonder if that too can be delegated to our ward to decide, and maybe then homologated by our next Easter Ross area committee, because these things are a bit like the roads and potholes, timing is of the essence. So I'd look for a seconder for that proposal as well later on. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Maxine. I would absolutely agree that does not have to come back to the area committee, and the second part of the recommendation and how you spend that money and the equipment things, that's definitely a ward decision. And in terms of spending on the lunch club, my understanding would be if it fits into, and Helen can correct me on this, if it's seen as a COVID response, then it's a ward decision. It doesn't need to be an area decision. I would see that as definitely a COVID response. And I know Helen and I often have discussions on what is a COVID response. We go round and round and round in it, and eventually find some sort of agreement on the way forward. But certainly to me, that's quite clearly a COVID response. But Helen, I'll ask you to come in here.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson. I mean, I think in terms of the lunch club issue there, it depends exactly on how and for how long and how it's targeted as to whether it would clearly be a COVID response and therefore, could be dealt with through the ordinary application, which obviously can be done up to 1,500, or if it's more like the play park where your members are clearly seeing it as part of the wider response on an ongoing way. So it's not that immediate response, like the funding applications we've been agreeing for the last year or so. And in that case, I would suggest that members might need to have the area committee approval for an additional 2,000, I think is the sum that Councillor Smith mentioned. And that obviously that decision does need to be an area committee decision, but there could be an amendment today. And obviously if actually it was an ordinary COVID spend, because I think we'd need to look a bit more carefully at the proposal as to how neatly it would fit within the existing limited one-page budget application and the use of these funds for what's a wider response, I think would be fair to say.
Okay, thank you, Helen. I mean, we do fund lunch clubs from our main budget, that's true. But I think we have all said at Highland Council that we want these COVID funds to be much more flexible, much more adaptable to the needs of every ward. I've always been so against Highland Council taking the decision in a very narrow-minded decision on how these get spent, when each ward varies, and particularly our wards where we have areas of deprivation that other wards perhaps don't recognise. And I feel it's a really poor decision of Highland Council, and we're continually fighting to get more flexibility in there. So as an area, any flexibility we can bring into play, I would want to do that. As you say, maybe you have to look at the individual circumstance of this lunch club and where you can make it fit, try and make it fit. If it has to come back to the area committee, then we can do that. Maxine?
Oh, yeah, okay. I'd actually forgotten that we said the amount of spend we can allocate from wards is 1,500, because it used to be 500. So maybe I can live with, rather than put an amendment just now, because I've not had time to discuss this with all of my ward colleagues, just one of them. So I can accept that we can agree 1.5 from our own ward, and then what I would propose is if we needed to spend more of it, that we would agree it as a ward in principle and bring it back to the next committee, because we wouldn't be starting the lunch club till April anyway, so we'd have enough to continue for the first few months. So I'm willing to accept that. Yeah, that'll be fine. Thanks.
Good. Okay, so we agreed the recommendations Item 9. Okay, members. Moving on to item number 10, which is the Invergordon Common Good Fund on pages 65 to 72. Now we have 4 recommendations there: to note the annual report, to note the position of the Common Good Fund, and to approve the proposed budget. But we also have to consider whether or not disposal of the Invergordon Town Hall by lease or sale on the open market should be explored, noting this will require a new public consultation under the terms of the community empowerment legislation. So we have to take a decision on this. Helen, do you have anything you would like to add into this first?
Just 2 comments really. In terms of the general accounts, members will notice that the unusable reserves, the amount's gone up, and that reflects the Bouchardon bust being transferred back to the common good account, which members are all aware of. And the only other point I'd like to make in relation to the town hall and potential consultation is that although last time around it felt as if we consulted and then in the light of the comments paused to give the trust a chance to make a case to take it on, there isn't actually anything in the legislation that allows us to pause. So we have to end that consultation, which is why if we want to restart that process, we actually have to go back to square one and put out consultation again.
Okay. Maxine.
Yeah, sorry, hogging your meeting today, but there's a lot of interest on it to me. I think we need to make it clear to the public listening and to the journalists that the only reason we've come to this decision about the Invergordon townhouse is because it needs a lot of money spent on it. It needs hundreds of thousands spent on its roof, and its sandstone is crumbling to bring it back to a situation where it's going to live and continue. If nobody spends money on it and the council does not have that money to spend on it, then it will crumble and it will decay. Once the holes appear in the roof, it will soon fall to rack and ruin and be a pile of rubble, or be like old Roskeen Cemetery with no roof. So we need to get this sorted. We need to decide how best to keep that building intact. And if that means that we have to sell it to the private sector or to some other organisation, then that's what it means. At least it will still remain for posterity and be there as a historic building to see. So this is why we've come to this conclusion. I think it needs to be made clear as well when we go out to consultation with the public that these are the reasons we are doing it. We've exhausted every idea of business case put forward, and not just recently by the Invergordon Development Trust. We investigated this over 12 years ago and came to the same conclusions. There is no sustainable way of keeping that building going with only community use and only minor business use. It needs to be used for something proper business case. That's not what I'm trying to say. It needs to be used for a proper venture, not just something that's playing around the edges. So yeah, we need to make that clear in the consultation why we're doing it, because it's the only way we can find to preserve that building. Thank you.
There's no other comments to be made. So we agreed that we're going to explore this as per the recommendations. Okay, members. We'll move on to item number 11, the Tain Common Good Fund, pages 73 to 80. And there's 3 recommendations here: to consider the annual report, to consider the position of the fund, and to approve the proposed budget. Are members agreed on that? Okay, we'll approve the recommendations. Item number 12, again, it's Tain Common Good Fund, but it's looking at a disposal consultation for the Tain Wildlife Pond kiosk at the Tain Links. We're asked to note the outcome of the consultation process that was undertaken, to agree the proposal to change the use of the kiosk to a cafe, and to note that other permissions may be required in relation to environmental health and planning, and that we have to go through these procedures under the community empowerment legislation. Do members have any comments to make on that? We're quite happy to go ahead with that. I agree that. Okay, that's great, thank you. And then the final item on the agenda is the minutes at number 13, and they're on pages 86 to 90. They've been circulated. Okay, we all agreed on that? Thank you. That brings us to the end of our meeting, and we'll stop the recording of the meeting now. Thank you to everyone for coming along.